Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem. Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio. Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to Submission Radio, episode 117. Dennis Crowder here with Kasper Rosalowski. It is the 8th of March, and it's good to be back, Cass. I mean, 2 episodes of Submission Radio last week, and now bang, a big one for the fans this week.
I love it, man. I'm on a high. We're rolling off this high into a big, juicy, sexy episode, spicy new episode with the boys, and bringing a lot of sexy guests. I'm not gonna lie. Fresh off his win against Rashad Evans at UFC 209, the man himself, Dan Kelly, is coming back for fun times and more on Submission Radio on this very episode. He's actually going to be the first interview that we've got, and then Javier Mendez, the man from AKA, the man behind Khabib Nurmagomedov, and a lot of other guys like DC and Cain Velasquez, is coming on the show to clarify a bunch of things. Obviously, Ali Abdelaziz did a recent interview on the MMA Hour about Khabib's situation, and we want to know about a few other things. There's more questions to be asked, so we've got Javier to talk about that, about Cain Velasquez, about DC, and a lot more. Bas Rutten. You don't ever need any reason to have Bas Rutten on other than he is amazing and always fun to. So we got Bas Rutten to come back on the show to chat about a bunch of things, the MMA landscape. We've got Luke Rockhold. Speaking of sexy guests, it's been a while since we've had Luke Rockhold on the show, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the middleweight division that we want his thoughts on. And then another fun guest, isn't there, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, this guy's a friend of the show. We've known him for such a long time. You know him well. Damon Martin from Fox Sports is going to join us. We'll be breaking down Tyron Woodley, his whole situation, the perception from fans, and also what's next, his relationship with the UFC, what's next for the welterweight title with Demian Maia fighting Jorge Masvidal. Also, we'll be talking about Robert Whittaker fighting, the big fight here, Robert Whittaker fighting Jacare. A lot of Australian fans are excited, so we'll get Damon's thoughts on that and a lot more. But I think the big thing here as well is we will be talking about Logan, which is a movie I've been waiting for a really, really long time. We'll all be giving our reviews. How many Timothy Johnson mustaches will there be? Stay tuned to find out. So there's a lot of good stuff coming up on the program. Just a quick reminder, as always, if you don't follow us on Twitter, @SubmissionAUS is where it's at. Also like us on Facebook. And in April, a huge event is coming down to Australia. John Kavanagh's coming down. An evening with John Kavanagh. The first event's going to be in Sydney, Friday, April 7th. Me and Cass are going to be down there interviewing, hosting, and getting a Q&A going with you guys. Also, another event in Melbourne, Tuesday, April 18th. Tickets are still on sale. I hear they're going fast. So if you want to attend, please make sure to log on and check that out. You'll be able to get some tickets, see us do our thing, and have a bit of fun with us on the night. I cannot wait. But, Cass, we've been giving people an opportunity to win tickets through Submission Radio, and we have a winner for the competition, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. We've got a bit of a spicy competition running where we're giving free double passes every single week to see John Kavanagh live. You don't even have to buy the tickets. You just listen to Submission Radio. All you got to do is drop an iTunes review and then email us at info@submissionradio.com just to let us know your username on iTunes and tell us which event do you want to go to, Sydney or Melbourne. And it's that easy, and bam, you get the tickets. So this week's winner is a man by the name of Connor Mann. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think he said like McMahon, but without the muck. So Connor Mann, and I'll read you his review right now. Basically, the title is My Favorite MMA Pod. Good start so far. He says, love the work you guys are doing. Great access and insight to some of the biggest names in the game. I love that you both stay so unbiased, which makes for great listening without feeling swayed either side. Keep it up. See you guys at Star Casino on the 7th, in brackets, hopefully. Fantastic review. And as you predicted, Mystic Man, you will be seeing us on the 7th at Star Casino. So the free double pass goes to Connor Mann, and you can win tickets just that easily. We're giving away double passes, like we mentioned, every single week. So get those reviews in and email us, info@submissionradio.com. Simple email. You don't need anything other than your iTunes username and which show you want to go to, Sydney or Melbourne. So get that in now, and we'll be giving away another double pass, free of course, next week. But enough of that. The winner's been announced, and it's time to get the show on the road. We got a lot of people to speak to, and Dennis, I believe our first guest is on the line.
All right, guys. Well, it's a huge pleasure to introduce the next guest. He defied the odds and won a massive fight on the main card of UFC 205. He has just touched down back in Melbourne yesterday and is gracious enough to give us a moment of his time and, of course, break away from the massive Dad's Army party that we're sure is going on right now. The multiple-time Olympian and now UFC middleweight winner from this past weekend, Dan Kelly. Welcome back to Submission Radio.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. That was a nice little intro.
Yeah, we
spent some time working on it. You know, we didn't write any questions for the other guests. Maybe some of the other interviews from this week are going to be a bit lackluster. But at least you got the good intro, so it's all worth it.
Yeah, we got the better of 2 a.m. last night, right on that intro. But no, seriously, it's a huge honor to have you on the program after such a massive win. And like Dennis mentioned, you landed back in Melbourne just yesterday, but you must still be on quite the high from the amazing weekend you had in Vegas. Tell us, what have the last 24 hours been like for you, Dan?
Oh, good. I've, as normal, just got home, ran a kids class last night. We had, which has become a bit of a tradition now. We had beer and pizza here at the gym, and then I was back here running a class this morning, a judo class, and I've just been tidying up and cleaning up the gym and, getting caught up on all that stuff. So it's there's no rest for the wicked, unfortunately.
One of the disappointing things about that, of course, is, Dan, you had beer and pizza once, didn't invite us. That's okay, understandable. Second time you have beer and pizza, no invitation to the boys to come down and bring a couple of beers, maybe even a couple more pizzas for everybody. What happened? How did you make this crucial mistake?
I'm very, very sorry, but I was very sad that you guys didn't make the effort to come over to 209. I was really keen for you guys to be there.
Yeah, touche.
Well, your fight was late. You had a late fight announcement. If we knew ahead of time, forget about any of the other fights. We would have been there you would have had to do 5 interviews with us on the media day. Would have just stocked them up for the future. So now, Dan, you're fighting Anderson Silva. Oh, so now, Dan, you're fighting blah, blah, blah. Just really get them all in there for the future so we don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah, that would have been awesome. That would have been really good.
Well, obviously, it's not just a huge moment for Australia, as it was here, but it's also for your family. What was the wife's reaction like when you finally spoke to her after your win?
Oh, very happy, very relieved. She was happy because she thinks I was very, very smart and clever in that fight. So she was really, really happy.
Does she not always think you're smart and clever in your fights? What's going on, Dan?
No, she does. I think she thinks sometimes I just walk forward and get punched in the face, but she thought I was very clever in this fight, so it was good.
Oh, good. And I mean, obviously, you've got your wonderful kids, and they must be so proud. We know you don't let them watch the fights, but what was their reaction when they found out that you won? And do they realize how much of a massive deal Dad is at the moment?
They're wrapped. We actually, because there wasn't as much blood this fight, my wife let them watch the fight after the fact, so they watched the replay of it. They're happy. They're happy. I don't think I'm that big of a deal, but we're just going on as life as normal. We've got swimming tonight. We've got soccer practice tonight, so it's just back to normal routine, which is the best.
Wow. Did you watch the fight with them by any chance? And I'm curious what they actually said to you, because as we know, you generally don't let them watch the fight, so this would have been a rarity. What did they say after they watched the fight?
Well, I didn't watch with them. Maria made that decision while I was away. They were happy. They were very, very happy, and because it wasn't too bloody or anything, they were fine. So yeah, no. Eric, my oldest son, he's like, Dad's a legend now because he beat a legend, so now he's a legend. So that was very, very nice. But they were happy. They were really happy, and they're just happy that I'm home again. So because we're away for about 10 days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're not far off the truth. Now, I feel like we're asking you this almost every fight now, because almost every fight you're defying the odds and having amazing moments. But, I mean, you've had amazing moments in your judo career. You've been in multiple Olympics. But beating a superstar like Rashad Evans in Vegas, of all places, on a main card of a UFC pay-per-view, and arguably a fight that, kind of stood out as a fight that a lot of people were looking forward to. Where does this win rank for you in all the moments that you've had in the big wins of your career in judo and MMA?
No, this was one of the big ones. This was one of the really, really big ones. So in judo, I said in a post-fight interview thing that I did that in judo I beat some world and Olympic medalists and got close to winning a medal myself, but never quite got there. And beating guys like Rashad and starting to move up, kind of washing away some of the, not regret, but some of the disappointment that I didn't quite get a world or Olympic medal. This is starting to push that away, and as I'm progressing along, so it's like a new life for me. So this was a really big one because it was under a bit of pressure that I put on myself on a massive card People again didn't expect me to win really, and so massive win.
That's pretty touching that you say that it can wash away some of the disappointment. Did you ever think that would happen in your MMA career when you started this? Did you think that you were ever going to come to any, conclusions like that, or feel or the MMA would change the way you feel about your judo career?
No, not at all. And it wasn't until I was very nervous for this fight. It wasn't until the last few weeks that I started speaking to my wife and some of my corner about these kind of feelings, because I was like, why am I so nervous? And, you internalise it a little bit and just had a chat to them about it. And, this is like a fresh chance to take hold of some opportunities and really wring their necks kind of thing. So it was interesting. It's all a new process and learning new stuff about yourself, which is good as an athlete, I suppose.
And I'm just wondering, you mentioned the nerves. How different was it being in Vegas and sort of being away from the family? Because normally when you're local, you've got the family with you, obviously fighting in Melbourne, everything's just around the corner. How tough was that going over to another country and not having sort of that support system, or was that part of the nerves?
No, a little bit. I don't enjoy traveling as much as I used to, but I mean, I've traveled so much for judo and competitions all over the world for that was okay. It was more the opponent as well. I mean, that's a massive name that I was fighting, and even when he was coming into the cage, I'm like, well, that's Rashad Evans over there. So it was opponent based as well. So, and also you got your normal things of, am I at this level? Can I do it? Do I belong in the upper ranks and all that kind of stuff? So yeah, it's just all internalized self-pressure, really.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you about that. I really noticed that moment when you were walking out and you sort of had a bit of a look around the arena. To me, it kind of looked like there was a moment when you were walking to the octagon and when Rashad was coming in where it all sort of clicked in your head like, all right, this is actually happening and I'm actually here and this is about to go down. But was that right? What was it like? What was going on in your head as you were walking out there? Because it was a scene, man. I'm not going to lie. It was a scene.
Yeah, well, it was. Some of my students and friends are like, "You look like you're going to a funeral." I was very nervous, but you know what? Luckily, I managed to pull myself together very, very quickly. And at the end of the day, once the cage shuts and there's the first couple of minutes of the fight are over, and what else is there to do other than fight? So it was fine.
You know what's awesome? Obviously seeing the contrast between you walking to the cage and then seeing your face when the decision was read out. I mean, it was just, you were in ecstasy. And in our breakdown, we even used that image of you having a hand raised as the thumbnail because it was so good. And, a good win for you, unfortunately, it means a loss for Rashad. But, we were really impressed with the way Rashad, dealt with the loss and the defeat. Did you have a chance to speak to him at all afterwards? And I'm just wondering, how did that conversation go if you saw him?
No, only in the octagon, straight after the fight before the decision. And he was very nice. And I just said, regardless of the result, thanks for the opportunity. And he was very nice. He said, yeah, sorry about your shorts. And, you were tough. I knew you were going to be tough. That's why I wanted the fight kind of thing. But then obviously he's very upset that he lost. But in his social media, he was very gracious. He wasn't derogatory at all. So, I mean, look, if you're in the ring together, it was a close fight. I think I definitely won it, which the judges did as well. And he hasn't said I won that fight or this or that. So he had, it was nice.
That is really classy. And that's really nice of him to apologize about the shorts immediately after, knowing that, if it was me and I was fighting, I'd be worried about the decision, not so much about your shorts. So that's really nice of him. Just curious, what exactly happened there? Because it was a weird moment. He went for a takedown and then 2 seconds later, your shorts are completely ripped. What exactly happened there?
He went for a takedown and he grabbed my shorts and I sprawled and pushed my hips away and he didn't let go of my shorts and the shorts tore. So that was all it was. Apparently, Big John said that if he had completed the takedown with the shorts, ripping the shorts and that, he would have lost the point. But because I stopped the takedown, nothing happened.
Wow.
So that's an interesting rule. But yeah, all's well that ends well. And I mean, I keep my shorts, keep the shorts of every fight I've had in the UFC. So it's just another pair of shorts with another story now. So
nice.
It's good.
And there's fighters all over the world now writing that down. If you grab my shorts, let him get the takedown. I can just imagine someone doing that and not getting a point deducted and being like, Dan, I thought you said the point's going to be. So don't go ahead and do that. Let's quickly talk about the fight. I mean, Rashad Evans, a great legend, a champion, a huge star in the sport. But talk to us about what it was like actually being in the octagon with Rashad compared to what you thought it may be like. Did anything surprise you about what it was actually like?
No, he didn't. To be honest, he didn't hit as hard as I thought he would, which was good. And everything else was pretty much as I expected. I implemented my game plan pretty much how I wanted. I would have liked to have taken him down, but man, he was like a cat. No, I chop his legs down, he'd land on his front, and then he'd be springing straight back up, and I swept his feet out, and he landed on his bum, and he jumped straight back up. Like, he was really athletic. He also very flexible. I caught one of his high kicks and thought, oh, beautiful, I'm going to take him down, get him down. Now he managed to squirm out of that. So he's super athletic, like super, super athletic. So that was even more so than I thought. But yeah, no, that were the main things. He didn't hit as hard, and he was harder to put on his back than I'd hoped he'd be.
I mean, we saw huge improvements across the board in your striking and your hand fighting. Just curious, what was the game plan and how close did you sort of get to perfectly executing it in this fight this past weekend?
Everything was perfect except for the fact I didn't finish the takedown. Like, I planned the hand fight. He always hand fights. If you watch his fight against Little Nog as well, he's constantly tapping that front hand. If I can slide my foot out to the side, at the outside of his foot, it's hard for him to take me down, and obviously then it's a battle between my cross and his cross. And the foot trip actually worked a lot better than I imagined it would. So that was handy because I really unsettled him with sweeping his foot all the time.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I mean, it was a great game plan. I think we are going to quickly put the spotlight onto your coaches. Talk to us a little bit about who really prepared you for this fight, some of the guys that you were sparring with, and the guys that sort of helped you formulate the strategy, because it was a great strategy that ended up working out well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, all the best laid plans are fine beforehand until you actually get in there. But I mean, Andrew Colgrave, Brett Franklin do all my striking stuff. And especially I was a lot lower this time. And I think I was a little bit more mobile than normal. And obviously Gustavo Falciori and Callan Potter, I took over there as well. They were really good. In just being able to implement my plan. I mean, I know I got called a zombie in the cage by the commentary, but I think I was a little bit more technically savvy than I normally am, and a little bit more tricky than I normally am with linking everything together. So yeah, my coaches are awesome. We always come up with a good plan. It just shows we can do it all from down here in Melbourne.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many great people to train with. And just quickly on that style, I mean, some people were calling you a zombie, but to me what it looks like is you're almost developing your own, I suppose, striking style. You've taken a lot of, obviously, the great stuff from boxing and Muay Thai and stuff like that, but there's also sort of an element to your striking that opponents don't really know how to deal with. Do you sort of feel like you're almost becoming a Dominic Cruz in a way, where you've got your own Dan Kelly style of striking going on? Your K1 Dan Kelly with a little bit of salt and pepper on top.
I don't think I'll ever be as smooth or fancy as Dominic Cruz, but I think people do have a little bit of trouble. They from the outside watching, they go, this guy will be easy to hit and easy to finish, and I think they get in there and they go, well, hang on a sec, this isn't as smooth sailing and easy as I thought it would be, which is perfectly fine for me, because they keep overanalyzing or just brushing it aside, going, oh, look, he's easy to hit, he's always there. It's perfectly fine for me.
And it's pretty much exactly what you predicted before the fight. So it's amazing to see that that's exactly what came to fruition. You mentioned before about how you were so nervous going to this fight and you were questioning, whether you had it, whether you were good enough. And I mean, we asked you this before your last fight with Kamosi, but how much confidence does this win give you in terms of where you stand in the division? Now that you have conquered Rashad, does that go away, those questions of doubt?
No, they never go away, because, I mean, then you'd be too complacent. I think I deserve a ranked opponent for my next fight. There's no question now. You can't win 4 in a row and then beat someone like Rashad and even Chris Kamosi to fight before, and Shoeface, and not be knocking on the door of fighting someone in the top 15. And I now think that I can fight almost anyone if I've got time to prepare and train for the fight. I mean, it's good. It's a good place to be. It's a very good place to be. I don't think the nerves will ever go. I've always suffered with nerves before competition, but it just means that we can go, yep, if we do everything how we're supposed to, I've got a chance at winning the fight. Because anything can happen in the fight game. I could get flash knocked out in my next fight. I mean, it's possible. I got knocked out by Sam Alvey. But if we prepare properly and everything goes how it should, then I can win the fight.
Yeah, and a big fight is what people are expecting next. While we're still talking about UFC 209, tell us, what was it like being Dan Kelly post-fight after your big win? Did you notice more fans sort of spotting you in the hotel? Did you have any conversations with Dana White or Joe Rogan? Because in a lot of ways, before the fight, it seemed like not that many people knew who you were. But after the fight, Dan Kelly was the hot kid on the block and everybody wanted a piece of him.
Still haven't spoken to Dana any other times other than shaking hands at media things or at weigh-ins. I had a chat with Mick Maynard, which was good because I'd spoken to him on the phone a few times, but now I've actually met him. Joe Rogan, no. Look, before the fight, it was actually different this time. A few more trainers, a few more fighters knew who I was. Oh, you're that judo Aussie guy. Now much more friendly than they were like the last time I went away. But yeah, not so much. Afterwards, we went to an Irish pub that was in the hotel we were staying in, had a few drinks, and I was really tired, to be honest, and went to bed. Not that I could sleep very well, but went to bed about 3 a.m. So it wasn't a massive night for me. I'm getting a little bit too old for that stuff.
So people weren't throwing underwear and bras at you trying to get the autograph. I reckon a good moment, Dan, was when you were doing the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan and he asked you about that knee brace. What did you think about that? Because that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, it was funny.
This is the first time Joe Rogan had ever seen you, obviously.
Yeah, well, that's the second time he's interviewed me. He interviewed me after the Rousey home fight when I fought on that card against Steve Montgomery. So he interviewed me once before, but yeah, they can do whatever they like. What they don't understand is the knee's fine. If I'm taped, I can do everything, and it gets through all the training load. So people want to target it next fight, good luck to them. It's no different from the other knee when it's all taped up.
It's funny though how Joe asked you, like, oh, what's going on with this knee? And like, is this new? And you're like, yeah, it happened in 2006. And it's been... I think that was,
exactly.
I think that was my favorite moment. Yeah, I mean, well, you mentioned the body. I'm just wondering, how did you come away with this fight? Because while it looked like a great performance, I mean, sometimes later on you find out that a fighter, had something happen. Did you come away with any kind of injuries? I'm just curious.
No, I'm a little bit sore. My hand's sore. My body's just a little bit achy, but I'll be training again probably beginning of next week. No problems at all. So I'm fine. Just let the body heal normally. Have a little bit of rest. Make sure the weight doesn't go out of control, and then hopefully I'll get a match up for New Zealand.
Okay. Because we're going to go for this next. Well, that's what you're looking at. Sorry. Because the UFC. I know. Well, you ruined my plans, but that's okay because. I think you ruin a lot of people's plans, Dan, in a positive way when they pick against you. So that's fine. We've never picked against. We're not picking against you here, though, because UFC in New Zealand, that's going to be in June. It should be a good card. Unfortunately, no Aussie cards until possibly the end of the year. So that's sort of the closest one that's happening. So you're sort of happy to go over to New Zealand and do that one, or would you be open to possibly going back overseas now that you're a huge celebrity over there and getting another fight?
No, I want to fight in New Zealand. Closer to home. The deal was with the kids that no one goes to Vegas because we went away at Christmas. If I win and get onto the New Zealand card, then we'll go and do the whole Hobbit Village thing in New Zealand after I fight. So I've kept up my end of the bargain. Just got to wait and hope that I get a match up in New Zealand.
Very nice, very nice. And you've got New Zealand around the winter time. It's beautiful. You've got a lot of snow, a lot of good fun things to do. But let's say you do go to New Zealand. I mean, we like to play matchmaker from time to time when it comes to you. And it's hard to figure out who or what should be next. But a big name seems, like it's well-deserved. Now, you mentioned before that, you're happy to fight someone or you want someone in the top 15. You mentioned after the fight that you think you could take someone in the top 10. Is there anyone who's on the Dad's Army radar at the moment? And just curious, will you be keeping a close eye on Vitor Belfort this coming weekend?
Oh, yeah, Vitor would be awesome. Look, outside of the top 6, so outside of, now we've got GSP who's thrown a spanner in the... Not a spanner. He's made the title picture a little bit more interesting. So you got Bisping, GSP, Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold, Jacare, Rob Whittaker, Musasi. They're all fighting for the title thing at the moment. Anyone down from that, I'd be more than happy to fight.
All right, well, Anderson Silva versus Dan Kelly it is in New Zealand. I can't wait, Dan. We'll see you up there.
that'd be an awesome matchup as well. That'd be an awesome matchup. So we'll see.
Is there one that you would prefer? Let's say the matchmakers say, all right, Dan, we love you. We're going to give you whatever you want. They say there's Vitor, there's Anderson. Is there one that sort of stands out for you more? Obviously, they're both legends of the sport. Anyone that you like more?
Well, Anderson Silva's everyone's dream to fight him, isn't it? So, I mean, outside of everyone going they want to fight Conor McGregor, but Anderson Silva would be awesome. I mean, another former champion, same as Vitor, but Anderson would be really cool. But the thing is, we'll see what they see what they offer me in the next week or so, and yeah, as long as it's a ranked guy, I don't really mind.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been working on some new nicknames for you, Dan, and the new one that I think should be used for the next fight is Dan Kelly, the Legend Killer. And I feel like Anderson Silva would be another great name on that list. Very excited to see what happens with you next. Very, very happy at the big win. Enjoy it. Keep in touch with us. Let us know when the next pizza and beer nut is going to happen. And yeah, keep us in the loop because we're excited for UFC New Zealand. Before we wrap it up, I mean, we've got a lot of Aussie listeners right now who are super pumped at your win. A lot of New Zealand fans who are super pumped at you possibly fighting down there. What's your message to them? What's your message from Dan Kelly after this huge moment in your career?
Oh, well, thank you very much for the support. And obviously, Australian MMA is growing. It's growing and we're getting stronger and stronger. And just keep jumping on board and support our local UFC guys. So when the big card comes down to New Zealand, make sure you buy tickets and watch it and get behind it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great guys to obviously support nowadays in the UFC from Australia. And you guys can do your part in supporting by heading down to Dan Kelly's great gym in Footscray Resilience Training Centre to train with the best. And you can obviously follow Dan on Twitter at Dan Kelly Judo. Dan, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. We can't wait to see what's next. Thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure. It's always good to talk to you guys. Thank you very much.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is the man behind one of the greatest gyms in MMA, a.k.a. and such fighters as Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold, and Khabib Nurmagomedov, Javier Mendez. Welcome back to Submission Radio. It's been a while. How's it going today?
Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
Oh, well, the pleasure's all ours now, Javier. Let's get into it because it must have been a tough week for you last week, leading into UFC 209 with the unfortunate news of Khabib not being able to face Tony Ferguson for the interim title belt. Set the scene for us and take us back to the moment when Khabib first had issues and felt the pain of the weight cut. How did you find out?
Well, the first time he failed the weight cut, I was not there. I was home. He had not used me as his corner. He used other people as his corner, so I was not there. And he had a nagging knee injury that prevented him from training properly. So I don't know exactly what happened, but I do know he had the knee injury going into that fight. So that was probably one of the reasons probably why he wasn't able to do what he's doing. Since then, he's had a nutritionist come on board, and he's made the weight the last times. One thing that I never have done, I don't ever get involved in the weight cutting process because I'm no expert by any means, and I don't want to screw the guys up by adding my influence on something I know nothing about. Mm-hmm. So I always take the theory of if I don't know something about something, if I'm, I get someone that's more of an expert in that area. And that's basically what we've done. We put people in charge that understand the weight cutting process, and that's what Khabib had. I was not aware that there was any issues because at the time it happened, I guess it happened about 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or something like that, and I was asleep. I wasn't there. I'm never there. It's a superstitious thing that I do. The only time I was there with the weight cut was when Daniel Cormier fought John Jones, so I went through the whole process. And after that, I said, God damn it, I'm not ever going to weight cutting thing again. Because, like I said, I'm just there for support, and I'm not in it. So I said, I'm not going ever again. So, and then Daniel, for the next fight, when Daniel fought AJ, I said, Daniel, I'm not going to the weight cut. Daniel says, yeah, Hop, don't show up. I don't want you there. I go, yeah, I'm not going to be there. Because he's kind of superstitious, too. Yeah. So I don't ever show up to the weight cut. So I can't give you guys really anything on that because I would just be a armchair quarterback there. Yeah. So Ali did his interview already, and he already stated what had happened, and just have to go on what Ali said. I'm not going to mix words on something I know nothing about, and then screw something up and say something stupid that, is not something I have any full knowledge of.
And that's fair enough. What I'm curious though about, what was your how did you find out? You mentioned that obviously, and Ali did, that this all happened around about 4 a.m. What was that like? You wake up, I imagine your phone's blowing up. How did you find out, and what was your immediate reaction when you found out? Oh wow, he's not going to be fighting.
Well, I woke up around 10 a.m. and I wake up to call some Ariel Hawani and all those guys. And then the first one I got was from Habib around 5. He goes, Coach, sorry, I'm in the hospital. I love you. And I'm like, oh, shit. So I was in shock. And, so I called Ali, and Ali told me that, yeah, he started having problems, so they had to take him in. And I was just like, man, my streak continues. It's like, it doesn't matter, whether I'm there or not there. I'm taking the heat for it, and justifiably so. I'm the head coach. So it's like anything, right? It doesn't matter whether you knew about it or you didn't know about it. You're the head coach, so you're going to get blamed for it. And I accept it, So all the fans that are out there that are blasting me, let them. They have a right to. They spend hard, good money on the event they were looking forward to, and somehow or another, it happened to me. Bad luck again, whether it be bad luck or whether it be me being an idiot coach. That's just the way it is. The only thing I do know is that I will consider what I do is when my fighters themselves are looking at me and going, "Would you fail me, coach?" But not one has ever done that to me. And then in the history of me coaching MMA, which is going back when I really took full control, was about 2000, right? I've only had one fighter turn on me, and that was Josh Koscheck. And, and Josh had his reasons, and he was justified in his reasons. So, other than Josh, I've never had one. So as far as I'm concerned, what I'm doing is still working, and I will continue to love my guys and take care of my guys and keep improving the sport and learning more about our sport. We're still in the learning phases, and the weight cutting has become a science too, with everything that's going on. So there's so much to learn, and we'll continue to learn.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about in regards to all that. And I mean, a lot of fans sort of still getting their head around all that. But what I want to find out from you, Coach, is obviously when you found out he was in the hospital, did you get a chance to go down there and visit him? And what was that like?
No, I didn't get a chance to go visit him. I called Ali, and he said, "No, please, Coach, don't. He's asleep now." So I said, "Okay, please let me know when I can come visit him." And as it turned out, I didn't get to actually see him until he came to my room after the fights. He wanted to come talk to me. So that's when I saw him, and that's when we hugged, and we talked about the thing, and discussed, he just didn't know what happened. He goes, all of a sudden, he just started having stomach pains. Everything was going the way according to plan, and he just started having stomach pains. And Ali's room was right next to his, so I guess they did what they had to do, and just I can go from there. That's it. I mean, there was nothing else that I knew other than what he told me, is that he just started having stomach pains. And I go, well, did you do anything different? He goes, no, the same routine as the last 2 times. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert in that arena, so I don't know what could have gone wrong.
Yeah, and we respect that. I mean, unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done now. All you got to do is look forward. And looking forward, his manager, Ali, said that, May might be a possibility. UFC 211 in Dallas, Texas, that falls on May 13th. Do you think that would be enough time for you to get Khabib ready for a fight?
It's all up to Habib and his body. I know he 100% is having himself checked out. He's going to the best facility in Germany to have his whole body checked out, blood work, everything, to make sure he's ready to continue. So until that's done, I don't think that any decision is going to be made on whether he's going to when his return date will be. I think it's all going to be based on what the doctors tell him there, and most importantly of all other things is his father. His father's his biggest, his biggest advisor that he's going to take. That he's going to take his father's advice before he takes my advice or anybody else as advice. So it's going to come down to him and his father making the decision after he gets cleared when he goes in Germany to have himself checked out.
Mm. And his father is obviously a huge, huge influence on him, like he said. I'm just curious, how does that relationship work? You're obviously the head coach, but his father also has coached him his whole life. What's your relationship like with his father?
Fantastic. I love that, man. He's a great coach. I know my role. My role is second to him, and I gladly take it. I mean, I would even take the bucket boy in regards to being around Habib. He's such a great human being that I have no problem with any of that. Just being involved and watching him succeed, and if you know Habib, you love Habib.
I'm curious, what is it that makes that relationship so special? Because I saw an interview recently you did, and you said you love him like a son. Where did that all sort of come from? What is it sort of that makes this bond so special between you guys?
It's the way he's loyal, he supports you, respects you, and the kind things he does for the whole team as a whole. It's just humbling, Another one that comes to mind that does a lot of things like that is Daniel Cormier. He's like that too. But the difference between Habib and Daniel is Daniel's a prankster. So Daniel always pulls everybody's chain, but Habib doesn't. But they both have the same kind of heart. All my guys are great, but those two in particular are very, very generous, very, very generous. Both of those guys.
Just last question in regards to Khabib's dad. I mean, we saw the interview that he did where he mentioned that he sees retirement pretty soon in Khabib's future after a few more fights. What's your reaction on that? And do you think in reality we could see Khabib retire a lot earlier than a lot of people imagine?
Being that his father, like I said, is a huge influence on him, and if that's what him and his father decide to do, then that's what will happen, and I support it, if that's what they want. But, time will tell, right? I mean, he first, he has to get that title, and I think that's a very important thing in his life. And I would think if his body is 100% healthy, right, and his mind's the way it has always been, like wanting to be the best, then it may be longer than 30 because of the fact that things like this happen, delays, injuries, and he gets injured, his opponent gets injured. I mean, this is the third time between him and Tony, right? He first gets injured, then Tony has to pull out for medical reasons, in which is justified. Now Habib pulled out. So who knows? Anything could happen. But I see it potentially happening if that's what they wish.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll get to sort of what the next opponent for Khabib would be in just a moment, but obviously you're going to support Khabib and his father no matter what, but how would you actually feel about it? Because I feel like you'd be a little bit torn on the inside, wanting to be supportive, but at the same time, him being one of the best guys coming out of AK, it'd be a bit hard to see him retire a bit early, don't you think?
Well, for me, this is me personally, on a selfish way, I would want him to continue to ride the wave and influence the millions of people that he has the power to reach. I think he can impact a lot of millions of people, and I think that him continuing as long as he's healthy, I think will be good for everybody. I think it would be good for the fans. It would be good for the people that are close to him on a financial way and then in a mental way. For me personally, the same way. Financially, it'd be good for me and it'd be good for AKA, definitely, but, if I'm going to be selfish, then yeah, of course I would want him as long as he wants to do it and he's healthy. But that's the key thing. He wants to do it and he's healthy.
Well, let's talk about who could be next for him. I mean, a lot of people are talking about this fight being rebooked once again against Tony Ferguson. Other people are saying maybe new opponents for both men. Where do you sit on this? What would you like to see happen next for Khabib?
Well, I would like to see what the UFC wants to see, which I would hope to be is the fight that people want to see is still Tony and Habib, because that's clearly the number one and number two, and the fans want what the fans want, right? And that's what I would like to see, because I know Habib, hey, everybody has bad luck, and it just happened. It wasn't like he was doing anything in particular wrong, but his body failed him, and it wasn't that the weight cut wasn't going according to plan. It's just his body shut down, and it happens. I'm sure when Tony got hurt, when he had the body issue, whatever went wrong with him, I'm sure he was doing everything that was proper. But remember, he had to pull out too because something went wrong with his body. So, can you say he screwed up? No, I'm probably sure that's just what happens in our sport. It's just a new phase, and I'm sure he didn't know what happened to him. I don't quite remember exactly what happened to Tony, but something happened to his body where his body failed him too, and he had to have himself checked in. It happens. So I would like to see them fight again in May 11th if possible. But again, Tony would have to want to fight too. Tony has an opinion too, and he, I'm sure he has family to support, and he's going to have to feel good about that fight and secure that the fight will happen.
For sure. And I mean, it didn't happen last weekend, but it got so close to happening. It's gotten probably the closest that it's ever gotten to happening. So I just want to get your opinion. I mean, in the back of your mind, how did you see this fight playing out at UFC 209? How did you see Khabib beating Tony?
Well, I saw this fight being extremely, extremely tough. There's no ifs and buts about it. I saw Khabib mentally dominating him, and it wasn't going to be easy because Tony is probably a tough mental customer as Khabib would have ever faced, and he was just so dangerous and the stand-up dangerous on the ground. I think we had the advantage in the ground. He had the advantage in the stand-up. But keep in mind, a lot of people are sleeping on Khabib's stand-up, and he's still improving, and he upped his stand-up from this fight to the last fight. And a lot of people they're making comments, well, look at Michael Johnson, he smashed him. But you know what? That's because Khabib wasn't fighting properly until after the 2-minute mark. Watch the fight. From the 2-minute mark on up, watch the fight again and see what happens. Tell me if Khabib didn't outstrike Michael Johnson from the second minute on up. He did. He outstruck him because why? Because he went to what we were working on the whole training camp. So he went exactly to what he needed to do, and he demolished him on the ground, demolished him on the stand-up. But he did it the proper way. Before that, the 2-minute mark, he was doing his own thing. That's why you see myself, Islam, and Abubakar, his brother, going crazy because he was doing the opposite of what we were supposed to do. So, people are sleeping on him, and they're making it look like he doesn't have stand-up. Well, they're wrong. If they come watch him in the gym doing his stand-up, they're going to go, damn, he's pretty good. He's a lot better than you think. So the fight was going to be very interesting, and it was going to be interesting both stand-up and the ground, but it was going to come to me, in my opinion, on the mental and who was going to break. And I, of course, I have to feel that Khabib was going to break him because no one's ever broken Khabib. And Tony's been broken. He's lost. So to me, that's been broken. So that's where I feel was going to be our edge. Not particularly on the ground, not particularly in the stand-up, just on the mental.
The two big fights from in the division are obviously Tony, but also Conor McGregor. I'm just wondering, between Tony and Conor, who do you think is the tougher challenge?
For us, Tony was the tougher challenge because, he was dangerous everywhere. Conor is the most dangerous on the stand-up, probably out of any lightweight in the world ever. So Conor, we'd have one specific plan for him, and that would be to minimize any stand-up and just put pressure on him to take him down. And, Conor's not the best at defending the takedown. And once he's on the ground, Conor's in trouble. See, but the thing is with Tony, once Tony's down, he's not in trouble. Tony's dangerous on the ground. Conor would not be a danger at the ground. To me, it would be like Khabib standing with Conor. The longer we stand up with Conor, the worse it gets for us. Well, with Conor, the longer he's on the ground, the worse it gets for him. With Tony, he was dangerous everywhere. So stylistically, I say, and not that I'm saying one's better than the other. It's just stylistically for us, Tony was a much tougher fight.
Yeah, and understandably. I've always wondered, Javier, you've always had these amazing wrestlers and grapplers at AK, elite NCAA guys like John Fitch, Cain Velasquez, and DC. And size difference aside, how does Khabib, compare to those guys in terms of his grappling skills? Like when he walked into your gym, were you sort of blown away instantly? How does he compare to those guys?
Well, when he first came into my gym in 2012, I was blown away instantly. His stand-up was horrible, but his mental and his tenacity to overwhelm anybody that I put in front of him was amazing. It was amazing. Literally amazing. He would just, no matter what, his will, you can keep hit him, whatever, but he'll take you down. And when he took you down, rarely ever do you get up. As you see, you guys seen these fights. He takes you down, you rarely get up, and he's so much better at it now than he was in 2012. So, imagine that guy coming on top of you. It's no picnic for anybody that deals with him. They have to spar with him. They know, like I give you a perfect example. On this camp here, I had him go with Mowgli Benitez, Gabriel Mowgli Benitez, and just boxing only. And Khabib looks at him and goes, no, coach, no, I got to take him down. I said, no, you're going to stand box with him only. So they're boxing that. Javi's looking at me like, you're crazy, coach, you're crazy. So about a 2-minute mark into it, I said, okay, go ahead, take him down. So once I said that, within 5 seconds, Mowgli was on the ground, and it was all over.
Wow.
And that's just the way it is with Javi. He's so dominant that anybody his weight, he's just that dominant. I've never seen anybody be able to handle him on the ground. And that's why I always say, when I find that first person that can deal with his ground game, then I see somebody that I fear. And that was why I fear Tony Ferguson, because he's got a really good ground game, and that's why, I say stylistically, he's the guy that was the most dangerous fight.
Well, speaking of dominant forces in the gym, Cain Velasquez, everybody's excited and dying to see him fight again. We know he had surgery in early January, but how's the recovery process coming along, and how's he looking? Is he back in the gym training yet?
Rarely. He's been more enjoying time with his wife, and he did an R&B, those rentals that they rent. He's got one in Arizona. He's fixing up to rent. So he's been doing that and spending time with his wife and his child. He's been doing more family stuff. He comes in the gym on a rare occasion, but he's slowly coming back into it. He's not jumping on board to do anything. He's just taking his time.
I'm wondering, a lot of people, they're sort of concerned that because of how many injuries he's gone through, that Cain will be a different fighter when he returns. Can you clarify that and shed some light on it? Is he still capable of being that same guy who tore through the division and won the belt twice, or has he sort of had to adjust his style a little bit because of his, some of those injuries?
No, he's adjusted. He's adjusted because of the injuries. He's adjusted how much sparring he allows himself to do. The guys control how much sparring they want to do. I do not. They're technically they're my bosses. So basically, if they want to spar more, I can just advise them. I don't think you should, and this and that, and they're going to say, no, Hab, I want to spar. Like I give you for instance, Cain Velasquez. I told him I think you should minimize how much you spar, and he took that advice and did even more so. He said, no, I'm only going to do this. I go, okay. He didn't take my advice. He took his own advice. Where Daniel Cormier in the opposite, I said, Daniel, I think you should only spar one day hard, and the rest go light. And he tried that at the beginning. Then after that, he goes, no, I'm not listening to you anymore, because I'm going to spar. I need to spar harder, and I need it for me. And I said, okay. So basically, I have two guys that are doing the opposite of each other, and I have to support both of them, because if I don't support both of them, then am I really there for them, or am I there for me? I'm there for them. So I allow them to dictate, but I do advise them. I don't advise this. I don't advise that. The only one thing that I will not do and have not done is when they're injured to the point where that injury affects their sparring, I won't let them spar. At that, I don't care. I said, no, if you're injured, you're not sparring, and I will basically take them out. That's when I fight with them. If it's something like that, I will fight with them. They will not get away with it. Like, for instance, if they want to spar without headgear, and that happens a lot, and I said no. And they say, no, I'm sparring without headgear. I go, then you get out. You're not sparring without headgear. So that's the areas where I do control them. So it's not like they control me everywhere. They do not. But in certain areas, they do.
I'm just curious, have you ever had that where a fighter was injured and you could see that, and the fighter was saying, look, I want to spar, and you did have to kind of not physically fight him, but you did have to have that argument with him? Like, is there an example of that happening?
Yeah, it happened. Wait, no. When you see it, you see me. I turn into a different person. I'm not that nice, and they're not that nice, and we go at it. And I'm willing to fight with my guys to get them to understand. Wow. I love them that much that I will fight with them. I will literally fight with them.
Who was it? I'm curious, Javier. Who was it that was so tough they wanted to fight through their injury?
I won't say that, but right. I say it happened. But I'll tell you where I'll tell you a funny situation that happened is, and it was on a reality show we did. One of my fighters, Mike Kyle, disrespected one of the coaches, and so Mike Kyle and I went at it. We went in the locker room, and we were going at it back and forth, cussing each other out, and we got in each other's faces, and
wow.
we were talking mad stuff, and all of a sudden, Mike and I both realized that we were being filmed while we were arguing. So we all of a sudden we realized we calmed down. We were like, oh shit! We were that heated. I had to do that because I had to show him respect that I was the head coach. You're not about to disrespect the coaches like that. I'm not going to have that. So we had it out, and him and I both were like, oh crap, we just did this on a potential. The good thing about it is they weren't following Mike Kyle, so he wasn't part of the platform, so it never got aired. Thank God.
Wow, that's unbelievable. What fans could have witnessed. Quickly circling back around to Kane, I mean, you just mentioned he doesn't really come into the gym much. He's obviously spending time with his family, which is great, but do you have any idea of a time frame for his return? When can fans sort of look forward to seeing him fight again?
I would say probably summertime, probably June, July, somewhere. It depends on the UFC and his managers, what they put up. I know that May 11th is something they're looking at, but realistically, Kane is not going to fight on short notice. He's not going to fight without an 8-week training camp. So I look at it like if he's hardly ever coming to the gym now because he has other business things he has to take care of, I don't see him fighting. I see him fighting 2 times this year, but I don't see him fighting in May because of the time frame now. I mean, if he had been consistent, let's say if he started consistently training since last week, then I see it as a possibility if the UFC wanted him to fight in May, I see that as a possibility. But because of he hasn't been consistent, and I don't see that as a possibility. I do see him potentially fighting June, July, even August, and then probably closer to the end of the year. But that's when I see it.
What were some of the opponents that the UFC offered you guys in May?
They never offered anything because they don't ever talk to me. They talk to Kane's manager, so I don't think anything's been offered. And I could be wrong on that. I 100% could be wrong on that because no one ever calls me and, hey, we're offering this opponent, except for Mowgli Benitez and Alejandro Perez. Those are the only 2 that actually that they want me to choose. But everybody else has a manager that they deal with. I don't have any say. I find out after the fact. When they take a fight, except with Ali, who's Habib's manager. I always find out from Ali, who they want to put up, in my opinion. So from Ali, I always get a voice. That with everybody else that's in my camp that has their managers, I do not.
Javier, we really appreciate the time you're giving us, so we'll let you go in just a moment. Just a couple more questions. Just lastly on Kane, is there anyone that you're eyeing in terms of opponents? We know that you didn't know sort of who was offered or not, but is there anyone that you're looking at and saying this is the fight we want? Obviously, that Verdum rematch was supposed to happen a couple of times. There's other guys like, say, Overeem or Francis Ngannou. Anyone that you're looking at?
I want Overeem. No, sorry. Wrong. No, I want Fabricio. Sorry. Yeah. I want Fabricio. Fabricio's the fight that needs to happen. That's the fight that's supposed to happen. That's the fight that should happen. That's the fight I want. I want Fabricio. Kane's always been able to revenge on the opponents that have beat him, and I want him to have that opportunity to seek that revenge out with Fabricio, and hopefully the UFC can put that fight together because that's the fight I want. That's the fight I think the fans want to see, and that's the fight I want. Anybody else, if it has to go to not Fabricio, then whoever it's going to be that's going to get him to that title is who I want. And Francis Ngannou is not going to be that guy, in my opinion, because to me he's a great talent who's really not 100% tested yet. And if he's number 1, then I want Francis Ngannou if he's number 1. But he's not number 1. So I want number 1. If Kane's number 1, then I want number 2. So that's the order that I would want. I don't want anybody other than the number 1 or number 2 guys. That's who Cain Velasquez should be fighting. And I don't want him fighting the number 5 or whatever guy. I want him fighting number 1. Whoever's going to get to the title is who he should be fighting, not anybody else. He's already proven that he's the greatest at the present time. He's still the greatest UFC champion of all time, and he will again prove it, but I don't want him having to fight. He's already proven it, so he should fight the number 1 or number 2. If he's number 1, he should fight number 2. That's the way I feel.
Okay, Javier, before we let you go, just quickly got to touch on DC. Obviously, he's got a huge fight coming up with Anthony Johnson. In regards to Johnson, how do you see him as a fighter since the first fight in May 2015? Have you seen anything from him that has led you to believe he's a different fighter and a different test to the guy that Daniel defeated back then, or is it sort of similar?
No, he's advanced in everything. I mean, Anthony. Well, look, he's knocking people out. He knocked out Bader. He knocked out, Brazilian. What's his name? Shit, forgot his name.
Glover Teixeira.
Why would I forget his name? Yeah, Glover. Why would I forget Glover's name? Yeah, it's horrible of me. Hey, he's knocked out Glover. I mean, and these are the best guys. He's knocking them out. There's no question. And then the Jimmy Minowa, he knocked him out. Come on, he's destroyed these guys. He's destroyed everybody. So you can't tell me he hasn't gotten better. Yeah, he's gotten better. But guess what? So has Daniel. So has Daniel. So we're going to see a great fight. Fans are going to be treated to a fight. It's going to be just like the first one, higher level, but the same.
Do you have a prediction?
It's the same fight.
Obviously, the first one ended somewhat quickly. What's the prediction if you had to give one?
If I had to give one, I say it's the same thing as the first one. Daniel's going to break him, and of course, it's going to have to be on the feet and on the ground. It can't just be both, So he's going to have to break him like last time, and it's not going to be an easy task. And we got to watch out we don't get caught because, as you saw when he hit Daniel, he launched him. Now had Daniel not been able to go with that punch, who knows? It might have been lights out for us. Johnson is one dangerous competitor, and I happen to I really like him too. He is such a gentleman, and he's a class act. I mean, out of all the fighters I've ever encountered, I would have to say he's my favorite. Him and GSP are probably the most respectful and class act guys that I've had the pleasure of going up against.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on the program. A lot of exciting things coming up for AKA. Guys, make sure to follow Javier on Twitter at AKA Jav. That's AKA JAV. Javier, once again, thank you so much for coming back on the program. It's been too long. You got to come on more often, and we're excited to see what the future holds.
All right, you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, this is Ariel Helwani, and you're listening to Submission Radio with my two favorite mates, Dennis and Casper.
All right, guys. Our next guest needs very little introduction. He is an MMA legend, a previous UFC heavyweight champion, a UFC Hall of Fame, a three-time king of pancrase, and a movie star. He's now joining us back on Submission Radio. The handsome one, El Guapo Bas Rutten. Welcome back to the program.
Hey, good to be here, guys.
Oh, man, so much to talk about. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. And this interview, people don't realize, but this interview almost didn't happen because you were in a movie when we were trying to lock in the time for the chat. But it was a movie that was a worthy one in Logan. Tell us, what did you think of Hugh Jackman's last movie playing Wolverine?
I loved it. He looks completely different, though. It's he's broken down now. It's not the Wolverine you expect, the crazy maniac we saw him before, when he was all jacked up, like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
He's frail right now, but it's cool. It's cool to see X-23, it's pretty much a clone from him, the girl. And then, of course, X-24 is there as well. I don't know if I want to say to the listeners what it is, but they will enjoy that, I believe.
What did you think of those fight scenes? Because for me, these are some of the goriest, bloodiest fight scenes that have been in any of the X-Men movies, and I found it really, really satisfying. Did you get off on that a little bit? Are you as sick as us, Bas?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I'm as sick as you guys. If not sicker. I mean, I love it, and we all have to thank Ryan Reynolds, for Deadpool.
Yes.
Because once they made that R-rated, they started doing it with these movies as well. And this one really deserved it. It needed it as well, I think.
Yeah, and also we need to thank him because I think he's going to try and get Hugh Jackman into that second Deadpool just to do a bit of a cameo appearance. So hopefully that happens. But do you see a future with without giving anything away or any spoilers, do you see a future with some of the storyline that's revealed in the movie, Bas? Do you think they can go ahead and create a movie just based on some of the kids that we see in the movie?
Yeah, I think so. I think we'll have some new new crazy characters coming from that, because that was in the future, what I understand, right? It was like in 2029.
Yeah.
It's where all the mutants are gone, and we met the guy, the son from Whittaker was there, who was now the Doctor, but he created his own, mutants. So yeah, I think that for sure that's why they let the kids escape, of course. And I think X-23, that's going to be could be. Well, I don't know if they can carry an own movie, but I think together the kids, yes, they can carry.
I can tell, but because you're dropping all the terminology, you're actually a pretty big X-Men fan. No surprises there. Just quickly, while we're on the subject of movies, Bas, I mean, let's be honest, it was a pretty interesting Oscar season this year, to say the least. What was sort of the movie of the year for you? And can you give us maybe your top 3 movies in the last calendar year, or 3 movies that really stood out to you?
You know, for me, it's always what do I say? For me, it's violent movies. I guess it's the same with you guys.
Yeah.
Right? It's like Axeman. It's like all that kind of stuff. I just want to escape. For me, it's not about going and... It's cool to have a really cool story one time, of course. I love that as well. I want to see Get Out. Apparently, that is a really good movie as well. But what does stand by? Arrival, I saw that. That was one of the last ones I saw, which I liked. Doctor Strange. I like Doctor Strange as well. It was good. But you know, Zootopia. No, that's a fun movie. I don't know if you go there if you don't have any kids, but if you do have kids, you should go there, and you will realize that it's actually a really funny movie. Those movies, these animated movies, are really great always. So Hell or High Water, I thought that was a great movie. That's pretty much Civil War. Yeah, Civil War was good. But I didn't like it as much as the ones they had before. I like this Wolverine. Wolverine was really good for me because I like to see him like this. You know, it's hard. Oh, well, I guess everything has an end. I mean, Spider-Man, Batman, no, Superman. Wow, Superman is gone too. I mean, everybody's gone.
Yeah,
with good reason.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not too bummed about Superman. I feel I never liked a single Superman movie. But just lastly on Logan, what I was surprised about, and I didn't even realize, my girlfriend pointed this out, is Krzysztof Soshinsky, a guy that was in the movie, has a little bit of a cameo. I didn't know that, and I was surprised and happy to see him. Did you know he was in the movie?
Yeah, you know, because in every trailer they put him in. You know, so. I just put him in, what did I say? I said, you know, after this movie, everybody wants to play soccer with Christoph, I think. You know, that's what I said. So without giving anything away.
Yeah, yeah.
Just on Zootopia, Bas, I went and watched the Pets animated movie, The Secret Life of Pets, and to get away and people not thinking I'm weird, I actually took my dog to the drive-ins, so it looked like I had a reason to be there. Nevertheless, there were a bunch of other weird dog people there, and people still looked at me funny. So I don't think I really got the point across. But anyway, I can see what you mean with some of those kids' movies actually being a lot better. And a lot of people are actually saying, just quickly for the listeners, the new Batman animated movie is actually a lot better than a lot of the Batmans, or especially the Batman vs. Superman movie that came out recently.
Oh,
so,
that
anyway.
was horrible, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm looking to see the Deadpool trailer. Did you see that?
So good. And did you see how Logan's playing at the cinema there? It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And he uses him too. He says, he doesn't have to change. He's in a tank top. Instead of on my watch when he walks on the street.
And then he eats the poor guy's ice cream. I love it. He's like, do you want some? Rest.
Yeah, don't say anything. Just rest. And then,
see, I would love to see you in a Deadpool movie. I actually think Deadpool's made perfectly for you, Bas. So I'd love to see you get in there one of these days. But since we've sort of mentioned the controversial Oscar season, let's sort of jump into the controversy that was last weekend at UFC 209, because there was a little bit of controversy in the air, a couple of disappointments for fans. But I want to sort of chat about the card first and a couple of fights from there. What did you think of Alistair Overeem's win over Mark Hunt last weekend?
I think he's been going back to what he used to do. Single shots, always keep a hand on the defense, and with the power that he has, he's doing really well. That's how he became the K1 champion. That's how he became Strikeforce champion. That's when everything went really well for him. Once he got away from his team and started throwing combinations, because of course he's training not with those crazy high-level guys in Holland anymore. And then if you train with other guys who are a little less and you can start throwing combinations, that doesn't mean you can do that in a fight, because he always had that class jaw still that we know. And to see him do this now, that was perfect. You know, I was hoping he was going to do that way before, but now he found his itch again, you know, and to knock Hunt out like that, it's really impressive. A beautiful knee. So, yeah, no, he looked great.
I mean, a knock. Yeah, we said this last time on the show that it's one thing to knock out Mark Hunt, but to knock him out in that kind of spectacular fashion is just amazing. You know, I said that I think that was the best performance of Overeem's career that he's ever had. When you factor in, now that we're in the USADA era, the fact that Mark Hunt's so tough and so well rounded, and a lot of it sort of comes down to Jackson Winklejohn and the fact that he's brought in his own guys. What do you think of what should be next for Overeem? I mean, there's a few options. Some people are saying Francis Ngannou. I personally said Cain Velasquez. Other people are saying maybe Derek Lewis. Do you sort of have a fight that stands out to you that maybe you'd like to see and think would be next?
Well, from what I understand, he was asking for GDS, right? For Junior Dos Santos.
I think he was sort of waiting to see like what would happen. He was also open to Francis Ngannou, so there's a few options there.
Yeah, Ngannou, the French guy, right?
Yeah,
the tough guy, yeah. You know, maybe he should welcome him because that guy is good. That would be good win if he wins that fight. So I'm pretty much good with everything. The title not yet because he just had one. But if he beats one of those guys, yeah, for sure he's back on track to try again for the UFC heavyweight title. And if he fights like this, I think he can do it.
What do you think of the heavyweight division in general at the moment? Because some great fighters. Overeem's looking great at the moment. Stipe is a good champion. He's done really, really well. But you do get that sense, and a lot of fans sort of have that sense, that a lot of the excitement around the division is gone because you're sort of really struggling to make matchups that aren't rematches and sort of make fresh fights. And there's not that many fresh new faces. Francis is an example, and Derek Lewis. But apart from that, there's not really anything huge and exciting. And there's, Mark Hunt, he's always been one of those KO artists, but you don't have as many of those sort of scary heavyweights that you can't look away from the screen for a moment. What do you think of the sort of landscape of the heavyweight division at the moment?
Well, Francis Ngannou, he looks very promising, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I love to see him fight. Derek Lewis, he's doing great. The last fight, he looked great. The fight before that, he told himself right away after the fight, he said, this was a horrible fight for me. I didn't feel good. And I love that he said that because it wasn't. It was a horrible fight still, which he won. And then now with the last one, that was a baddest fight. So I expect from him a lot to happen, especially now he cracked the top 10. And then I believe, hopefully that gives him an extra little fire. And he starts even working harder because a body like that, to train that for stamina is just a very hard thing. But just imagine he can go for 3.5 rounds, and then just spread it out over 5. Then you should be. That's a real dangerous guy. But then we have Cain Velasquez. The Terminator who just comes at you, and even with Lewis, if he jumps on top of him and constantly pressure, he can wear Lewis down. It's very hard to fight a guy like that. Fabricio Verdum is not done yet. Overeem, I see Overeem going really strong. That will be a great fight against Junior. Yeah, I like the heavyweight, but yeah, it's not like the heavyweight division at the Pride Fighting Championships. That was the strongest division, I guess, and it was always exciting to see.
I'd love to see Cain Velasquez come back and really get a good run in, and sort of live up to those Fedor-esque expectations that a lot of people set for him. But I don't know. I guess we'll see. Let's talk about the main event because many people had this fight scored 3 rounds to 2 for Wonderboy. A lot of people still thought Woodley. Some people said draw. What was your take on it? How did you score it, and who do you think won, Bas?
For me, okay, the first time they fought, I thought actually that Woodley won the fight, and now I thought Wonderboy won the fight. That's and I love both these guys. It's not anything that I'm bagging people down. I'm just you're saying what you're seeing, and that's what I thought. The first 2 rounds, I would say, well, it's Thompson because he was pushing. Yeah, they didn't throw a lot of punches. They didn't do anything. But if somebody was pressing the action the whole time, it was him. Was it really pressing? Was he really baiting him to throw a strike? Because that's what I think he was doing, of course, to throw a strike so he could counter that. Yeah, but still, you had the illusion that he was pushing it. He was pushing him backwards the whole time, and Woodley had his back against the cage the whole time. So, then you have to give it to him. Then, of course, round number 3, I thought that was Woodley. Round number 5, of course, when he started unloading and connecting. But it was not a 10-8 round. It was not like he was dazed and almost out. That would be a 10-9 round. So, I thought it was 3 rounds for Thompson and 2 rounds for Woodley.
Well, a lot of people sort of wondering what's next for the division with Demian Maia fighting Masvidal. Who do you think gets the next title shot against Woodley? And also, what do you make of Woodley as UFC champion? Obviously, he's had some negative comments towards Dana White in the UFC. It looks like they're sort of not going in the right direction at the moment in terms of their relationship.
Yeah, I don't know all the things he said. I don't know. I think for me it's a long time back. This is a different thing, but it's kind of the same. I had a fighter at Pancras, and he's constantly complaining about more money. He needed more money. He needed more money. And the only thing I told him, I said, just win fights. Just keep winning fights. That's the only way to get more money. If you keep winning, but then he lost the fight, and he was complaining again. He wanted more money. And needless to say, they dumped him. They said, you need a guy like that. You need to win. And you need to win in spectacular fashion. If you want a money fight, but you need to be that money guy. And you can see, in the breakdown that I had, I said that if Woodley comes out and he just pushes Thompson, he's going to win this fight. Because last time when he did that, he did phenomenal. And now he started doing that in the 5th round. He could have done that earlier, and if the bar wouldn't have been set as high, but both fighters said Thompson figured him out. That's what he said, and he was gonna put the hurt on Woodley, and Woodley said, I'm gonna stop him this time. And when you hear that, and you look at the interviews, you want to see it, you expecting that, and then you see this fight, which was it was not an exciting fight, and that doesn't. It's not a big deal. It happens to everybody. Everybody can have a night off. I think there was way too much respect for each other. And both guys didn't do what they normally should have done. It's a shame. But listen, Woodley's got to win. He didn't lose. Last time it was a draw. So, whatever happens, he still got the W.
Yeah, it was a bit of a bummer, but not as big as a bummer as obviously the cancellation that broke MMA fans' hearts around the world. And that was, of course, Khabib versus Ferguson once again being called off. This time for the 3rd time. Weight cut issues, they're a really serious thing, but where do you go from here? Should the fight be rebooked again? Can the UFC do that? Do they need to look for other opponents? What do you think, Bas? What do you make of it?
Well, that's the UFC needs to do that. But yeah, if this is already the 3rd time, it's very hard for him to get 155. I don't think he should fight at 155. I mean, once you have to understand, Nurmagomedov, he's a badass. If he decides to go to a hospital, you can only imagine how bad it has to be at that moment. Because this is not a guy who's going to complain, I feel a little sick. I guess it was really scary. Otherwise you don't go to a hospital. So, with that said, I don't think he should fight at 155. Or, like what everybody else says, get a really good dietitian, and then hopefully, start cutting out way before, and then you can make it. But, the UFC can put their foot down. They can say, okay, well, we tried one more time because everybody wants to see the fight. But if not going to make weight, it's over. It's either, stop in the UFC or you're going to go to 170. But you can't take that risk anymore because everybody, including me, was looking forward to see that fight.
It's interesting because people are wondering, okay, so what's going to happen with Tony Ferguson next if they don't rebook this Khabib fight? I mean, Ferguson obviously wants that McGregor fight. Who doesn't? And at the moment, it's kind of mixed up. People are not really sure who McGregor would be fighting next in the world of MMA because GSP is now booked, and that was sort of the massive fight a lot of people thought would happen. So if you're sort of the matchmaker and you're looking at this, if Ferguson doesn't fight Khabib again, do you give him McGregor? And if not, who do you give McGregor?
No, then I would say Ferguson. He deserves it. What is it now? 9 wins in a row or 10?
9,
yeah. 9. So he deserves it. He wasn't the one who was wrong this time. This guy always comes to fight. You're going to see a great fight. I think it will be an exciting fight. And then he deserves it. So I would say give it to him.
While we're on the subject of GSP, we got to get your thoughts on this GSP Michael Bisping fight. What do you think? Some people are a bit divided. Me personally, I'm excited. Are you a fan of it? What do you think, Bas?
I am. I'm a big fan. And he's got the most wins in the UFC, Michael Bisping. They got him some slack. He had Anderson Silva and everybody. I said he beat Anderson Silva, then Henderson. Oh, no. And then, of course, he had Luke Rockhold also there. So he had quite a year. And, of course, people say, he didn't win him, and it was very close. Whatever, man. On paper, yes, he won all that. And I truly believe, actually, that he won those fights. I'm a big Bisping fan, always been. I think he deserves it because, he's a guy who does the talk and walks the walk. So I think it will be great for the pay-per-view numbers, especially with George St-Pierre. I can already imagine. Actually, George St-Pierre, GSP started a little trash talking, started making comments about him being drunk or hungover, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe he picked up some things from McGregor, and we'll start getting a little bit more colorful. That would be great to see that. And then just see what the fight happens. But I don't know. I cannot say right now what is if GSP is going to win it or not. Of course, everybody knows, he will take him down. But can he do it for the 5 rounds? We know that Bisping is always in incredible shape. And can he do it the first 2 rounds? Yeah, he will be taken down. But once, Bisping, if Bisping keeps on pushing and fighting from his back and gets him tired, it's his first fight back. He might think that he has it in the bag, but Bisping is not an easy guy, man. He can keep pushing.
Well, you mentioned it there, that this is GSP's first fight back in 3 years. How much of a factor do you think that will be? Because I still remember him saying in the Carlos Condit fight that until that fight, he didn't believe in ring rust or cage rust, and then he went in there and he said, all right, it is a factor. And that was that was after a surgery, after about a year and something layoff. Now he's got 3 years. I kind of think this is a really stiff test for him to fight a guy like Bisping, who's got the cardio and the volume. What do you think about that long layoff and how that will sort of play into the fight?
A long layoff, to me, it was nothing, 7 years. But it is also because my sparring is completely different. I spar every day, 2 times a day. That's what I do.
Wow.
Because that's what I'm going to do in a fight. So that's what I'm going to do in training. And that's besides all the other training that I do. So I think it's very important. If you do that, I had no ring rust or cage rust, whatever you want to call it, at all. I felt great. But for him just to come back after a while, look at Johnny Hendricks. Where Johnny Hendricks right now is. Johnny Hendricks, many think that he beat GSP, right? And it's a different platform of fighters right now. And I think that, fighting one weight class up, he's going to be the smaller guy now because him making that weight, in the past he couldn't do it. We wanted to see it at a catch weight, against Anderson Silva. That didn't happen. I thought that was maybe going to be the fight that made him come back. But of course, he right away wants to go for a title. And I, deep down inside, but this is my conspiracy theory, I think he wants to be a 2-division champion as well. So I have the feeling that once he has this, I don't think, I feel really bad for Yoel Romero if he wins this fight, which is going to be very hard for him to win, I think. But if he wins this fight, I don't think he's going to face Yoel Romero. He might actually drop in weight and go for another belt, try to do that.
What do you think the future holds after that? A lot of people still wondering if this McGregor-GSP fight can be made. Do you think all roads eventually may lead to this McGregor-GSP fight, or do you think it kind of depends on if GSP can win these fights for this sort of fight to come together?
Yeah, that's the thing. What is he going to do against Bisping? We're first going to have to see about that. If this is going to be a decisive win, then we know, okay, he can do it. But to go to 155 at that age, I think it's going to be hard. But I said it on Rutten and Ranallo. That was the first thing when I heard that he said, I can make 155. The first thing that I said, it was a day later when he said it. I said, he's going for McGregor. I guarantee you that. He wants to make big money. Everybody wants to fight McGregor. And that's why he mentions that he can go to 155. So, yeah, it would be something. Imagine this. Imagine if he would beat Bisping and then he goes to 155, then there's a weight class in between. He's got 2 weight classes with 1 weight class in between if he would win both. I don't think anybody else did that ever before. It's always 2 weight classes next to each other. It's never 2 outer ones. If you have 3, then he has a 185 and a 155. He doesn't have the 170. So depending how he feels, you would think then he would fight at his own weight and try to get that one as well, right? Be the first guy who has 3. That will be sick. But at 36 years of age, I don't know. George is a specimen, man. This guy, I think with him, everything was mental. That's why he wasn't performing as well anymore at the end. It was too much pressure for him. I think the belt be taken away. He gave up the belt. It creates a lot of more rest, He doesn't have to do all these interviews and constant pressure and everybody expecting, and he's got to keep his winning streak. There's so much going on with a fighter. I remember at my one time with me, somebody told me that, hey, Bas, you understand that you won just 11 fights in a row. And I go, oh, really? Yeah. I go, oh, man, I wish you wouldn't have said that. Because No, I never thought about that. And suddenly, now you won 12, and then you won 13. You don't like to lose the winning streak anymore. And then, you start fighting different. But, yeah, thankfully I didn't. Thankfully, for my 28 wins, I only have 3 decisions because I never wanted to let it go to the judges, especially in Japan, because if it's, leaning towards somebody in the end, it's going to lean towards the Japanese person. I guarantee you that. So that's why I always wanted to push, and hopefully I could get a finish.
Yeah, and retiring, I think, what was it, like a 22 win streak? You just don't see that in MMA. That was an insane accomplishment on your part. And it's funny how you outline this plan for GSP because it's pretty much the exact same thing that we said just a few days ago. So I feel like great minds think alike. Before we let you go, Bas, we want to let everybody know how they can pick up their own CBD oil that's endorsed by yourself. Bit of a surprise. We immediately thought Nate Diaz at the UFC 202 press conference. Tell us a little bit about it, the benefits, and how fans can get their hands on it, and I guess why you decided to get involved.
Okay, so what happened? I used to have after my last fight, I had an OxyContin problem, so I had to kick that stuff, and it was a very hard thing to cut, and I cut it with Suboxone, which is kind of the like a methadone, but it's a different way to kick it. And what happens if you take that stuff, they should wean you off, whatever they call it, in about 10 days or 2 weeks. But to me, they said, no, you can use that also because it will still help with the pain. No, that Suboxone you take, and that's like the painkillers, you have to take more and more and more because the liver knows how to break it down. With Suboxone or methadone, it's not. You can take the same amount or actually it can start decreasing. So I still took it for the pain, but I still had a lot of pain, and I was doing that for like 2.5, 3 years. I was taking that crap, and I had double vision. I was sweating. My heart rate was up. Everything was wrong. And I said, man, I have to stop this. And then I found out how hard to kick that is for 3 years, if you're on that crap. Because it goes into your bones. I did it in 11 days, which the doctor had never seen anything like it before. He said there's people who cannot come out of bed anymore for 6 months. That's how hard it is if you do it for already like 3.5 years, if you've been taking that stuff. So, but I had my mindset. I took all the amino acids and I worked out every day. I did a half an hour incline running. And you feel so bad. You cannot... It's almost like gravity, like you weigh 500 pounds. There's all day long you walk. It's a nightmare. It's really bad stuff to get up. So now with that all that said, I had this. Somebody sent me this stuff, the Receptra, and it was a buddy of mine, and I had no clue what it did. And I had a long trip. I had to go to San Diego, and I asked my wife because my back was messing with me. I had that problem with the pain pills. That was 2007. So it was a long time ago. Oh, no. It was in 2009. I stopped everything. But I asked my wife, I said, listen, we got this trip. Do you have a Vicodin there? So she says, oh, you want a Vicodin? Because I said, I'll get you one. So she comes with the Vicodin. And then right away, she gives me the Vicodin. And I get flashbacks right away from the bad times. I said, you know what? Let me try that stuff, that CBD stuff. I'll bring the pill just to make sure if that doesn't happen. And I took it, and I was in the car, and about 45 minutes, an hour later, I took a dropper of it, and I looked at my wife, and I go, man, I am so happy that I didn't take that pill. This is almost the same feeling. The pain is gone. Everything is gone. It's non-addictive. If you hear what goes on nowadays in the schools here in America, it is so sad, guys. I mean, in high school, what the girls do to get money, well, if I say it like that, you know already what they're doing for money. To get those pills, and then the pills become too expensive. And then I heard from the sheriff here. I know the sheriff; he's a buddy of mine. There's $5 a gram right now here for heroin. So if you have to choose between a $75 pill, or you say, hey, it's the same because it's synthetic heroin. It's exactly the same. You buy heroin for $5 a gram. Yeah, that's much cheaper. So then they make the switch to heroin, and at a young age to have to kick that stuff. I don't think it's good for anybody, and I think it will stay with you for the rest of your life. So now with that CBD, I had some students, and I literally had that bottle with me, and I was explaining some combinations. And all these students, I gave them a bottle later on, and that was the Receptra, but I didn't even know what the name of that stuff was at the time. And once the Receptra people saw that clip, they sent me stuff and said, hey, would you like to be involved? So now it's a whole new thing. Now I'm involved with these people because I tried a whole bunch of CBDs. And this one was by far the best one. But also we're doing a non-profit organization for CBD. And that's, we invite everybody, every brand. It's not about the brand. It's not about selling things. It's about helping people. So now we have, Frank Shamrock is doing it with me. He's with me on the board of CARE. That's the name of that program, the non-profit. But we have football players, hockey. We got every basketball players. We have high level top athletes who are all using CBD now instead of pain pills. So now I want to go start speaking to people, and hopefully at schools too. Talk to these kids and say, hey, listen, if you have pain, take this stuff. Trust me. The one thing, I never been beat. If I say, listen, I wasn't beat, I didn't lose the fight in my last 22, I beat everybody, everything at the time. But the thing that beat me was a stupid little pill, and I'm one of those guys who doesn't like to lose. So once I stopped that, well, that will never happen again. I guarantee you that, because then I lose again and I can't stand it. So, for me, it's an easy way to get off. Well, it was not easy, but, mentally, I just don't want to. Once you're enslaved to something, I always think the worst part would be, what if a war would break out? And they go, yeah, but you're so extreme, boss. No. But let's say, we don't know. It can happen tomorrow. Crazy Korea, North Korea, everything is going not right in the whole world. So imagine it happens. And then I don't have those pills anymore, and I have to take care of my family. How am I going to do that? You see, so once I picture that, that's for me, boom, right away, that's it. Cold turkey, I'm going to stop everything I do. And that's how I fix it. So hopefully I can go to schools and start talking to these kids. And, hopefully they use CBD instead of the OxyContin or whatever.
Oh, for sure. And, this is a huge breakthrough. It's helping so many people, and people across Australia getting onto it as well, figuring it out. And it's such a great thing you're doing, Bas. So we'll have to get you back on the show and talk about it some more. Guys, make sure to follow Bas on Twitter and Instagram at Bas Rutten MMA, and check out his weekly podcast, Rutten and Ranella. They do amazing things. We could talk about that for a whole half an hour because of all the cool stuff they're doing over there. And, of course, the CBD oil, you can check that out at bascbd.com. Check that website out. Make sure you do. Again, so many benefits to it, Bas. Thank you so much for coming on the program. We have so much fun with you.
You're very welcome, and thank you. And if you check out at the bascbd.com, we'll bring you to the Receptor Natural, but then you're on a special link, and that means that if you at the promo code, if you do Bas at the promo code, you get a 20% discount as well. So just make sure that you do that. And if I may, take the strongest version, because they're all the same price. And I'm like one of the guy, okay, so take the strongest version because you just take less, but you can do longer with it. You see what I mean? That's what I It's the pro version.
I like it. Go on there, grab the oil, and tell them Submission Radio sent you, Bas. Again, such an honor having you on the program. Have a great week. Can't wait to speak to you again. Guys, check out the oil. We'll be right back.
Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Godspeed.
Hey, guys, this is Brian Stan. You're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest is a man of many talents. He is one of the most dangerous middleweights in the world, a former UFC and Strikeforce champion, a skater, a surfer, an entrepreneur. He's also killing it in the modeling world. Luke Rockhold, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you going today?
Doing quite well. Enjoying a winter day, about 80 degrees up on the pool deck.
Oh, wow. Life doesn't get much better.
It didn't convert that over there.
I know that 80 degrees is hot. That's all I know. I like the sound of 80 degrees. I'm curious, where are you joining us, Luke? Are you still in Vegas or are you back in Santa Cruz?
No, I'm actually in LA at the moment. I had to come back down here for a little meeting, and then I'm gonna head back up tomorrow and get back to work a little bit here.
Gotta ask, what's this meeting? Is this anything that might interest us?
No, nothing. Commenting on right now. You never know, but I got some good things in the works, and so I'm just staying busy, trying to stay busy through the injury, keep my sanity.
Well, we saw you were at UFC 209, sitting in the front row with none other than Nate Diaz. We got to ask, what's it like watching fights with Nate? We imagine he would have a bunch of interesting things to say throughout the night.
Me and Nate have known each other for a long time, old NorCal boys, and it's always a good conversation.
I feel like there's almost like a buddy cop, like reality TV show in there between you and Nate Diaz. What do you think about something like that, Luke?
A what? A buddy cop? I'm not familiar.
Well, but buddy cop, like Rush Hour, like Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. It's like a clash of styles. Like you're both North Cal guys, but you're both so different. I feel like there's a reality TV show in there somewhere.
Depends on the pay. We'll see what they got.
Good answer.
Luke's not keen on it. All right, let's talk about the main event between Woodley and Wonderboy. A lot of people were very critical, saying it was too tactical. What did you think? You were ringside. What was your takeaway?
It was a rough one to watch. Obviously, it was in the last fight, and Wonderboy's got a different kind of. It obviously wasn't the most.
Sorry, Lukey, there. I do apologize, man, but it's just cutting out really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. You were saying Wonderboy's got a different style. Who did you score it for?
It was a close fight. Not one to say, but it was what Woodley, definitely did the damage at the end. Wonderboy kind of played his role, so I don't know. It wasn't. It just sucks that it didn't come out to be, what we be.
Well, we imagine.
I'm really happy for anybody.
We imagine you were obviously there to support your friend Khabib, and it must have been absolutely heart-wrenching when he was pulled from his fight with Tony Ferguson. What was your reaction to finding out the news?
It was rough. Obviously, I came out there for that reason, and the weight cut, it wasn't going very well. Khabib was complaining about a pain in his side, and we had to cut short the weight cut, and then sure enough, I guess it got worse overnight, and he had to go to the hospital. So, unfortunate. That was a fight I was really, looking forward to for Khabib, and it's been a long time working with that man, and I know he's put in the time and the effort, deserved it, and just sucks. So that's not much to say really.
Yeah, I mean, it was a major bummer, and we really feel bad for the guy. Just wondering, what do you think should be next for Khabib? I mean, a lot of people are wondering what the next fight is to make. Do you think you rebook this Tony Ferguson fight? What do you think?
I think what other choice do you have? Khabib he's undefeated, he's beaten everybody. He's done more than anybody. You can't take that fight away. You can't take the title away. It just needs to be rebooked. I don't any injury delays, so I think it should be rebooked as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is the fight that people have wanted to see for a really long time. And from what you understand, Khabib is happy to get in there as soon as possible, or do you think it may be a little while until we see him back in the octagon, possibly doing this rematch?
I don't think it should take much time. I think he's hungry. I think he's ready. And, it was from what I understand, he wasn't getting any blood to his liver. And from some kind of, something went wrong with the weight cut. It was, very similar to his last fight, from what I understand, and just something went wrong. You never know with these weight cuts, I guess. But I think he's ready to go. I think he can rebook that thing.
Because people are very, very critical of Khabib. There was that embedded where they're eating tiramisu, and I think a lot of people have a mixed understanding of how seriously he takes these weight cuts. I mean, you're someone that's been around him for many, many years. Can you clear that misconception up for us right now, for all the listeners at home? How seriously does Khabib take these weight cuts? And does, it was an embedded. Does he really go around eating desserts during fight week and, not stay on diet?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. I didn't even really watch the embedded. I don't know what controversy you're talking about, but, he's rolling with Dan Leaf all week long. And I know Dan's got him on a very, he was ahead of schedule. Not sure how it went wrong, but, I know he was following his diet.
And I think in that embedded, it's a bit deceitful because I think it's actually the Dagestani guys that are eating tiramisu. I'm not even sure if Khabib himself is eating it. But all right, let's talk about you, Luke. I mean, it's been a while since we spoke to you in November. Other than taking meetings in LA and obviously attending fights, what are some of the other things that you've been doing to keep busy? I mean, we saw you snuck down to Queensland around Australia Day for a cheeky surf. What was that like? What made you want to come down all the way to Australia?
I just was, I need to get a little trip and just kind of free myself. The injuries are tough, and, I usually push myself too hard when they start to get better, and I set myself back. And so I figured I'd get a travel in and just enjoy it, back and get to work. I had a payday out in Florida. I flew out to Bali, visited some friends, and off to Oz and visited Mick Fanning. My boy is his photographer, so good friend I grew up with. And so we just, we all have our company together, Grapes, and we just went on a little tour. I did enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what a bunch of legends to catch up with. And of course, we couldn't catch up with you. We were busy. We appreciate that. No, we're kidding. It's okay. We understand you were busy. While you were down here, though, did you get a chance to get a meal in Attica? We know you missed out last time when you couldn't fight UFC Melbourne.
Nah, didn't get my Attica in. We had a plenty of good meals, but we're over on the Goldie most of the time, and so didn't quite make the venture to Melbourne.
What do you think of the Goldie? Do you like the Goldie? A lot of people have mixed feelings about the Goldie. I love the Goldie, but some people are like, I don't know how I feel about the Goldie.
I love it out in the Goldie. Good surf, and unfortunately the waves weren't as good. It would be nicer if they were, but just missed my window there. But I got a lot of friends out there, and it's just a good place. The weather was insane, and it's got a good culture to it. I like it.
I'd be up at the Gold Coast right now if I could. You mentioned before about training a little bit too hard when your injury starts getting better. I'm wondering, what we saw you were doing some training the other night in your Las Vegas hotel room with Henry Hooft actually while waiting for room service. What's that all about? Seems like you're obviously taking the opportunity to fit some training in. Almost looks like you're in fight camp. What's the deal? And are you sort of getting to that point again where you starting to train hard again? And I don't know, obviously risking that injury.
Yeah, I'm trying to work around and get better everywhere. Really, I'm always trying to keep my head in the game. It's an ACL injury, and it's that forward back motion. It's it was always the round kick. Every time I would throw the round kick and it wouldn't land, it would, the ACL would kind of contract and tear more. And so that's the one kick I haven't been kicking at all with my left leg, but otherwise, I can box and I can do other things. And so I've just been trying to stay busy, trying to stay sharp, sharpen up all my other tools and work around my left leg. That's obviously, I believe, one of my biggest weapons. So I know it's going to be there, but keep everything sharp other than that. And so I can, when my leg's cleared and I can kick and everything else is ready and I can just jump back in and fight.
And when we spoke to you back in November, you told us that you were trying to avoid surgery on your knee, hoping that it would heal naturally. Are you at the point in your recovery where you can completely rule out that ACL surgery?
I feel good about it. I feel good with the stem cells. I got those in, and it was working well for me last time. And so, I think the knee is, I don't have the pains like I used to, and I'm still not ready to throw it, given the timeline the doctors gave me. So I'm just going to wait till the end of the month, and I'm going to start slowly testing this kick.
Yeah, I'm curious because a lot of people are sort of like, well, when's the timeline? When's Luke coming back? Obviously, a lot of people are excited to see you back in there. So if you're sort of waiting till the end of the month to test that kick, what kind of timeline do you think you're sort of roughly looking at to make it back into that octagon?
I mean, ideally, looking at the schedule, I think a July, international fight week is looking pretty ideal. So that's what I'm looking at. It matters about the division too. We got some funny stuff happening, so it's unfortunate, and I'm just going to be looking for the right opponent when the time falls.
Do tell us, Luke, if you can elaborate. When you say funny stuff, what do you mean by that, and what would you say is unfortunate?
Unfortunate they took the route they took. I understand the business and I understand what they're doing, but I don't think they're really thinking ahead and making this fight. I think there's a lot of better options rather than tying up the division and making this thing happen. I think I don't think Bisping's a draw. He hasn't proven to be a draw. So what's the point of putting GSP in there with him? A man that's obviously never fought at middleweight, been out for 3 years. I think him and Nick Diaz, I think him, Anderson Silva, I think there's a lot of other fights that make the money they need and then sells that without doing what they had to do.
A couple more questions on that matchup. I mean, first off, when you look at how this may play out, who in your mind do you think wins it? Do you think GSP beats Bisping like a lot of people think he will? Or do you think the size difference will give Bisping an advantage to pull this one off?
I think the size will be a big factor. GSP's obviously walking out a lot lower, and the style matchup, it's going to be, it's hard to see GSP winning this fight, and who knows what's going to happen.
The big deal here is, I just want to get your thoughts on this. There was some criticism when Dan Henderson got the fight against Michael Bisping. Some people said, hey, this doesn't make sense. This goes against the rankings. But people sort of swallowed it because Dan Henderson's a legend, blah, blah, blah. Now the division, once again, Yoel Romero and a lot of the other guys are passed up because GSP just jumps in there and has a middleweight title fight. And the big thing here is, we're just sort of talking about what could happen, but not many people believe if GSP wins this middleweight title, he'll actually defend it. Maybe many people believe this is just a way for him to get his first title and then work his way to a possible Conor McGregor fight or another welterweight title. So being in that middleweight division and being in a pivotal position to possibly win that title again, things being held up once again. I mean, how does that feel?
It's a tough pill to swallow. I don't know what to say right now. I'm not here to dance around. I'm not here to fight, chumps and just do my thing. I'm coming right back for the title, and seeing this play out the way it has, it's quite frustrating. I'm not going to lie. So I'm taking my time. I'm trying to be patient, take a breather, and think this thing through.
Do you think that if GSP fights Michael Bisping for the title, he at least owes to defend that title once in the division? If he has, now that he's jumped over everyone, never really fought a middleweight before, went all the way to the top of the rankings, got the shot, do you think he owes it to the division to at least give back and have one title defense?
He's not going to fight one of the top contenders. I guarantee that. He won't. And he won't fight one. He won't fight two, and he won't fight three. I guarantee it.
It's definitely it's sort of a tough pill to swallow. So knowing that, you mentioned how you're frustrated, but how do you block that out? How do you get around that? How do you mentally sort of forget about that fact and push it aside?
We sit, we wait, we talk, we negotiate, and we see what's next. That's the way the game works. It's about finding something that's going to make me happy right now.
What do you think?
I want to fight. I want to get to the title as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're a bit tied up at the moment.
Is there anyone that stands out to you? Obviously, there's a few. Pretty much everybody's tied up at the moment. You got Robert Whittaker and Jacare was the guy that you originally wanted. You've got Weidman and Musasi. They're tied up. The only man at the moment that isn't tied up is Yoel Romero. Does any one of those guys stand out to you?
Yeah, of course. They all stand out. You never know what's going to happen when the division plays out, but, we're doing Yoel Romero, there better be a title on the line. So, there's no point to it. You're going to tie the belt up? Let's do an interim title. If I'm going to make that fight happen, I'd love to. But other than that, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Just quickly, because you did mention July, another sort of big fight. It won't be a fight that possibly gets you a title shot, but it looks like the title's going to be, tied up for ages. Is that fight against Anderson Silva? I know you were interested in it back in the day when times were a little bit different, and Anderson didn't really look himself in his last few fights. But are you still interested in possibly fighting him if he's free for sort of one of those big fun matchups in July?
You know what? It's funny you say that. I completely just lost hope with that fight. I was trying to pursue that one, and I wasn't getting confirmation on the other side. But if he, I would happily take that fight, and I'd love to get back in there with Anderson. So if that's a possibility, we will see. We will negotiate. We'll talk about it. So if he's into it, we'll see if he's up for it. I know he's, judging his mindset from his, talking after his last fight. I'm not sure what kind of fights he's looking for.
Yeah, I just got to ask you on that. That was a very sort of strange interview. It was hard to take. It almost sounded like he was going to retire for a moment. What did you make of that?
Yeah, it's exactly what I made of it. I don't know what to make of it. So it doesn't sound like he's, hunting down the biggest fights.
Yeah, it's certainly a crazy world in the middleweight division. Luke, we appreciate your time. We'll let you go in a second. On a fun note, we just want to get your thoughts on, this was a big victory for Australia. He's a guy that you may know a little bit because you fought down here. Dan Kelly, what did you think of, we'll finish up on this, what did you think of his big win against Rashad Evans this past weekend? I don't know if you were sitting ringside yet for that point in the main card, but what did you think? What did you think of his performance and big win?
I don't know what to think of that, man. He's not a fight style I particularly like. No offense, but it's it's a bit ugly, and it's hard to read. It's hard to score. So it's a weird fight.
All right, we'll fair enough. We appreciate your honesty. Just quickly, before we do let you go, Luke, the way you seem hungrier than ever. You seem very focused, almost like a fire's been lit inside you mentally. Does this mindset remind you of the same one you sort of had back in the day in Strikeforce, back before you ever held a world title and you sort of had so much to prove? Are you looking at yourself like that, Luke Rockhold?
No, I'd go to after losing to Vitor Belfort. That's the same situation I found myself back in. I got to build myself back up, whoop some ass, and take my title. So that's what I'm going to do.
if you come back, you get a good win, and you've got the title shot opportunity. But if Michael Bisping is not the champion, what do you do? Do you take that title shot, or do you take a detour and fight Michael Bisping and get that one back?
I'm taking a detour. I'm going straight for Bisping's ass. He's been running his mouth. He's been talking and avoiding every fight possible. That's the fight I would pursue. Shut him up. Move on. There's nothing more to be done. Bisping is running his mouth quite a bit, and getting upset of the year. I heard he's quite a stir in Las Vegas this weekend, being a drunk idiot and running his mouth. So guy's out of his mind. Thinking he expected what he was going to do, thinking he knew what he was going to do. I'll tell you what, when a guy's going to do, how he reacts after a fight, you go watch our first fight. That's when a guy knows what he's going to do. Bisping knows he's a lucky son of a bitch, squeaking out of that fight the way he did, and he's going to run with it. So that's the fight, He thinks he didn't get lucky. He knows. Look at his face after the second fight. That's a sign of a lucky man, on the run.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see what's next for you, Luke. Again, we really appreciate your time. We understand that you didn't catch up with us when you came down to Australia last, but I think a dinner is well overdue if you're down here in Melbourne, and I think I know a restaurant that we could go to. Guys, make sure to follow Luke on Twitter at Luke Rockhold. And Luke, again, we're very, very excited to see what's next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in Melbourne.
Thanks, Luke. Appreciate the time. Have a good one.
Hi, this is Connor Nelson, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, what can I say about this man that hasn't been said before on many episodes of Submission Radio in the past? He is a buffet friend, an ally, a guy that has shared many interesting times with us, whether it's been us sharing his hotel room and our videographer sleeping on his floor, to the great times of the UFCs that we've been to overseas. He's, of course, Damon Martin from Fox Sports and the owner and editor from nerdcoremovement.com. There's a lot to talk to him about. Damon Martin, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Oh, thanks for having me as always, boys. I appreciate it. And your cameraman is welcome to sleep on my floor anytime, although next time I may put him in the bathroom.
Yeah, you put him in the tub. That's bomb-proof right there, so it's safe, and I like the sound of that. Very comfortable. Now, there's stuff to talk about, boys, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it or jump around it. I'm going to jump right into it, and that is GSP's fight with Michael Bisping. Now, Damon, last week on a breakdown episode for UFC 209, me and Casper discussed it and shared our thoughts, but we want to hear your thoughts on it. We want to hear your take on it. What do you think of the matchup? Are you a fan of it?
I'm as much of a fan of it as I could be for, almost any GSP fight coming back. I mean, I personally would have liked to have seen him fight Anderson Silva because that's a fight we've all wanted to see for a lot of years. And in terms of GSP coming back from a 3-year layoff and where Anderson Silva's at in his career right now, I thought that fight made the most sense and it would be a big fight. But I don't really have a problem with this matchup. I mean, listen, I understand the frustration of not giving a title shot to Yoel Romero. He's the guy who definitely deserves it. He's earned it. But I tell people this all the time, and if you listen to me talk, you're probably sick of me saying this, but if you're an MMA fan, just strike the word deserves from your vocabulary because never think that it's actually deserved in this sport. So, listen, it's a big fight. I mean, GSP Bisping is bigger potentially than I think GSP Woodley would be. Connor's out of action right now. He's not going to get that fight either way. So this is probably the biggest matchup he could get outside of the Anderson Silva fight, which is the only one I really wanted to see more than this. But I'm okay with this matchup.
That's interesting. I want to ask you, Damon, what your appeal or what the appeal is for you in regards to this Anderson Silva GSP fight, because for a while now I've been off that bandwagon. I kind of feel like back in the day it made sense when Anderson was champion, GSP was champion. They were both kind of fighting for the title of who is the greatest of all time, and you think, well, if they can fight each other, what an amazing fight. I just feel like with Anderson Silva, he's kind of fallen from grace, or at the very least, he's not the champion anymore. Neither is GSP. He's been on the sidelines. I for some reason, I just don't want to see that fight anymore. I don't think it has the luster and appeal that it once did, and I feel like GSP should kind of move on. Personally, I thought maybe he should have come back and fought a Nick Diaz, another guy that's been on a long layoff, and sort of get this warm-up fight. Instead, he gets Bisping. Why do you still want to see Anderson GSP?
I think it's just the tease of a fight that we always wanted to see in those days, and we're getting to the point now where we got to be within a year or two of the fact that it'll never happen. I mean, GSP's been gone for 3 years. We weren't sure he was ever going to fight again. Anderson's 41, 42 at this point. I mean, the guy, no matter what he says, he's coming to the end of his career. I don't think he's going to be Dan Henderson fighting until he's 46. Maybe he will be, but again, what happened to Dan Henderson towards the tail end of his career? It's just, I think, listen, we couldn't get it together when they were both champions on top of the world. They're still just, again, it's like putting together Brock Lesnar and Fedor Emelianenko. Is it the same fight as it would have been 5 years ago when they were talking about doing it? No, it's not. But are you telling me you wouldn't tune in and watch? Isn't there still some kind of interest in a fight like that? Of course. So it's just one of those big teases we had forever, and we never got to see it. I mean, this was the original super fight. I can't even tell you how many stories I wrote about Anderson Silva and George St-Pierre potentially fighting each other, and it never happened. So it's kind of like, it's like the culmination of years and years of buildup, finally getting to see it.
I've been thinking about this fight because on the last episode, the breakdown episode, I'll tell you, Damon, even though I know you listen to every episode of Submission Radio, it's essential listening to yourself. I wasn't a big fan of this matchup. To me, it didn't really make much sense. But then I think about him fighting Anderson Silva in a fight like you, Damon, that actually I do want to see. But then I think if he loses to Anderson Silva, you never know what's going to happen. Does that take even more luster away from him? And I think I'm on the bandwagon of UCAS where I really would really like to see him versus Nick Diaz, because then no matter who wins and loses, the UFC sort of wins, because if Nick Diaz somehow figures out a way to win, then he's an even bigger stud. You could do stuff with him. Whereas with this Michael Bisping fight, I'm still not a huge fan of it, and I think there's a good chance he loses it. Even though a lot of people think he still keeps a lot of that kind of luster. I don't know. Fellas, to me, if he loses the Michael Bisping fight, I think a lot of these big plans kind of go out the window for me, because he's got a loss on his record against a guy like Michael Bisping, who is the champion at middleweight, who has gotten big wins against big fighters, but also hasn't really performed that well against guys like Dan Henderson, and people aren't really big on Michael Bisping. Do you guys think if he loses this Bisping fight, it kind of damages his future plans pretty substantially? What do you think, Damon?
It depends on how the fight goes. I know that sounds so generic, but I think it really does depend. If he comes out and looks crappy, he comes out and just, gets jabbed to death, or Bisping mauls him based on size, all those different things play into the factor, then yeah, it's going to damage him tremendously. George has never really been that guy, though. I mean, even in the fights that he lost, you really never see him get dominated outside of the Matt Serra fight, which was just a shocking moment in his career. But, even if he loses and it's a close decision or it's a 5-round battle, he can always fall back on the fact that he's not a middleweight. I mean, that was always the excuse we had kind of prepared in our back pocket when Anderson Silva would go up and fight at light heavyweight. You'd always had that prepared in your back pocket to say, yeah, but he's not a light heavyweight. It's true. I mean, I know it's a bad get out of jail free card, so to speak, but it's still true. He's not a middleweight. He's a guy who just said as recently as this week that he could still fight at lightweight. So clearly he's not a middleweight. This is a big step up in weight and size for him. So I don't think it damages him unless, like I said, it's just a really lopsided fight. But typically that's not the kind of fighter Michael Bisping is. He's dominated fights, but he's typically, what he did to Luke Rockhold was an anomaly by all standards of Michael Bisping's career. That's not a knock on him. That's just the truth. If you look at even his biggest wins, typically he doesn't go out there and do to fighters what he did to Luke Rockhold. And so I don't expect him to probably do that to George St-Pierre, even if he wins.
I'm with you, man. I think that this is a free pass. If George goes in there and Bisping beats him, and there's a big possibility that will happen, I think the fans will still buy it if he goes down to lightweight. It's not like you can look at the fight and say, well, he lost to a middleweight, he's obviously going to lose to a lightweight, and say Conor McGregor, even if he wants to go down to welterweight. I think this is kind of like a free pass, and that's kind of why I like this fight, because win or lose, it's, I don't want to say win or lose is good for GSP, but, if he wins, it's great for GSP. If he loses, it's really not that bad. Kind of like with Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz when he went up to welterweight, and people said, well, he lost, but he lost to a welterweight. I'm wondering what sort of GSP you're expecting, Damon, because I think that, and I've said this countless times, when he came back against Carlos Condit, he admitted to the cage rust, and now he's coming back after, 3 years, which is double the time that he had before. He had another ACL surgery. I'm really questioning what that double leg takedown is going to be like. Is it still going to be as explosive? And then you got Michael Bisping, who's this high volume guy where you're not going to get a chance to really get comfortable and feel things out. How do you envision this fight going, if you can even make a prediction so early, Damon?
Well, a couple things. I mean, the standard of anybody coming back from a really long layoff doesn't bode well for them. That's typically the case. I mean, that's just the nature of the sport. The longer you stay away, the less likely it is you're going to come back at the top of the sport. But we just had another tremendous athlete like Dominic Cruz come back and kind of prove everybody wrong when he did it and had a tremendous fight against TJ Dillashaw. Now we can sit here and say, did he win the fight? Did he not win the fight? It was a close fight. I scored it for TJ, but the fact is that it was an amazing fight, and Dominic looked better than I think a lot of people would have expected out of coming back from 3 years away, or however long at that point it had been for Dominic Cruz. So it can be done, and I think that if there's somebody that's going to be prepared and ready to come back from a 3.5 year long layoff, or basically when he comes back, maybe 4 years, it's going to be George St-Pierre. The guy's a monster in the gym. He never slows down. He's his own worst critic, even though he's considered one of the greatest fighters of all time. So I think he'll be prepared. As far as how the fight plays out, I think it really does come down to two things. I think it comes down to one, will George St-Pierre try to out-wrestle Michael Bisping? That's not really been a successful game plan for most people fighting Michael Bisping, but Michael Bisping hasn't really fought a ton of wrestlers. He fought Chael Sonnen. That was not a great fight. It was a lot of clinch work. Chael tried to out-wrestle him, but it didn't really work. But at the same time, he didn't really try to shoot in for double legs. There's a lot of clinch work, a lot of Greco work, which is, a lot of what Chael Sonnen does. So it'll be interesting to see if he tries to come out and out-wrestle Michael Bisping. And on the flip side, if he does try to strike with Michael Bisping, it's a dangerous matchup for Bisping because George St-Pierre kind of does what Bisping does. He throws out that long jab. He kind of pokes at people a little bit, and then he'll throw in some kicks and some combinations like that. That's very much a Michael Bisping style of striking. So Bisping will have to be careful because at the end of the day, that GSP jab is still one of the best weapons in the sport. He's one of the best jab fighters ever of all time. And if he can establish that jab, he could put Bisping in trouble, especially, and the last point I'll make is we know Bisping has had a damaged eye numerous times throughout his career. We've seen it. He's talked about it. If he gets hit in that eye a few times by that George St-Pierre jab, just like what he did to Josh Koscheck, that could be just a momentum changer in that fight.
Yeah, no, that's a great point there as well. And I'm also interested to see what GSP looks like without cutting the weight to get down to welterweight. I mean, it would have been a tough cut for him a number of times. We saw there was some controversy around that fight with Nick Diaz. So I'm wondering what he looks like. I mean, he's coming back to the sport with a lot less pressure on his shoulders. I don't really think he sees himself in the sport for that long. He's not going to be cutting the weight that he's usually cutting. He's sort of fighting a guy like Michael Bisping that I think he's got a lot of confidence against. And even during that press conference, he seemed like he was enjoying it a lot more than usual. So I'm very interested to see what kind of GSP we see. Quickly, Damon, though, I mean, UFC 208 saw a bit of an average ending. A lot of people confused with the ending for that one. Now UFC 209. A lot of people felt like this was a lackluster fight. I was one of them. I didn't really enjoy it near the end there as much as I thought I would. How do you feel coming away from the event that was UFC 209?
I mean, listen, the win got let out of ourselves pretty hardcore on Friday when we found out that Khabib Nurmagomedov wasn't going to fight Tony Ferguson. I mean, and I said this to a couple people after Saturday night was over. I said, listen, the event wasn't great. The best fights at UFC 209 took place really on the prelims with Yuri Alcantara and Darren Elkins pulling off those insane comebacks. Alistair Overeem's knockout was tremendous, and I really enjoyed watching Cynthia Calvillo's debut. But again, not really a name that we know. It was an impressive performance, but not exactly a big name to really kind of really add to the card necessarily. Losing that Khabib Tony fight really hurt the card because even if Woodley Wonderboy wasn't good or was what it was on Saturday night, we would still have Khabib and Tony to talk about. We didn't. So all we had to focus on was really that main event, and it just didn't deliver. So it was very much a lackluster event, basically a lot like UFC 208, where we had one fight to really come away and talk about afterwards. Whereas, that card, it was Dustin Poirier and Jim Miller. This card, it was really Alistair Overeem and Mark Hunt. And I want to give credit also to Dan Kelly, who put on a brilliant performance and a big win. I scored him winning that fight against Rashad Evans. But it wasn't the kind of, knockdown, drag out, kind of amazing kind of fight you want to see that you're going to talk about after. Big win for Dan Kelly, just not the kind of win that you're going to be buzzing about, 2 weeks from now, the way you would hope you would do after an event like this.
Yeah. I'll be honest, one of the, I enjoyed the event other than the main event, but I didn't hate the main event either. We recorded our breakdown episode, then afterwards I went and sort of watched the post-fight press conferences and saw what everybody had to say. And I got to be honest, one of the other disappointments of the night for me was Tyron Woodley's press conference and just some of the things that he said after that fight. I mean, it's no secret that Tyron Woodley for a while now has had I guess, PR issues and the fans haven't really attached to him the way that he would like. And some of the things that he said during that press conference, I can kind of understand why. Namely, you know, he had this fight with Wonderboy. He defended his belt. He's sort of trying to back up his performance. But then when he's asked, you know, who do you want to fight next? And after all this time of talking about these big super fights that he wanted, he basically says that he doesn't want to call out his next opponent. And he basically blames it on the fact that everybody goes crazy when I call out a name or when he calls out a name. And I really didn't agree with that. He's basically saying that he has names that he wants, but he's not going to say them for fear of what fans are going to say. He doesn't really want to deal with that. And I kind of think, look, if you're sort of talking about what you deserve and you strongly believe that you deserve it, I don't understand why he cares so much about what the fans are going to say. I think he needs to dig his heels in and say, listen, this is what I deserve, I've earned the right, and he needs to sell people on why he deserves the fight instead of backtracking and saying, well, you know, I deserve super fights, but now I don't want to say because of what the fans are going to say. You know, I feel like part of Woodley's problem is he's been doing this sort of flip-flopping where, you know, even recently he went on the MMA hour and he talked about how, you know, he wants to do it for Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali and things like that. But then when asked at the pre-fight press conference about similar topics, he says, look, nobody wants to hear what I have to say on all those kinds of things. And I just feel like between that and, you know, even taking things so personally from Dan Hardy over Twitter, where Dan Hardy basically criticized his fight, and Woodley basically said, look, I thought we were cool, and taking things so personally, I see why he's having these PR problems. And I think that as long as the fans are sort of undecided on him, and he's neither this Chael Sonnen-like villain or a GSP-like fan favorite, he's going to find it really hard to get those super fights that he really wants. What do you think, Damon? I know you know Tyron a lot better than we do. What do you think?
I'd like to say I know Tyron pretty well, and I like Tyron very much. And I've had some misgivings with Tyron in the past. I know he kind of jokingly called me out on the conference call, about the article I did about him and Dana White, and then he brought it up again when he was on Ariel's show. And I like Tyron very much. And when I saw him over the week, last week at Fight Week, he talked to me. I talked to him. Great guy. I've always liked Tyron. I dealt with him a lot in Strikeforce. A really good dude. I really like Tyron. I think the problem is that Tyron is kind of stuck in a little bit of the same situation that John Jones was in about 3 or 4 years ago, where the guy genuinely wants to be liked, and just for some reason people don't attach themselves to him. He doesn't have that, whatever the reason may be, they're not attaching themselves to him. And then he's reading a lot of this on the internet. He's one of those guys who reads comments, which you cannot do. Listen, I'm quite sure if I went on YouTube and every time I make an appearance on your show, which I always love doing and I appreciate you guys doing, but if I start looking at the comments on YouTube, there would probably be 50,000 people saying this guy's an idiot, he doesn't know what he's talking about, he's this, he's that, they'd make fun of me, whatever the case may be. So I just don't read it. I can't do it because it'll literally crush your soul if you start reading these comments. And I think Tyron is just a victim of his own circumstance, where he reads these comments and it digs at him. And I get it. That's what I'm saying. If I read those comments, it would do the exact same thing to me. If I read what everyone wrote about me or said about me, I wouldn't be able to get out of bed in the morning. And I think that's where Tyron's at, is he's reading or hearing what a lot of people are saying about him, and he takes it personally, and then it kind of comes back out because people are saying he sounds like he's whining or he's complaining. I think he's just a victim of his own circumstance, where he hears all these things being said about him and he's reacting to it. Just like the Dan Hardy thing. Dan Hardy had a comment about the fight. Tyron didn't have to say anything back. You know what I mean? He didn't have to say a word back about it. He could have just let it go and said, move on, or not even responded. That's, to me, that's the greatest. It's like the block button on Twitter, or the mute button on Twitter. I've had people that come at me with this just insane list of tweets, and I just mute them. Let them talk all day. I don't have to hear about it. And that's the key. You just have to let things roll off your back, especially, if I hear about it, and I'm nobody really, and Tyron Woodley is the greatest welterweight in the sport right now. I can only imagine the kind of just backwards idiocy that he hears on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
He just has to block it out better. You know what I mean? And so really that's what it's coming down to, is that he's allowing people's opinions of him to affect the way he's reacting or talking, or talking about the whole, I don't want to call anybody out because everyone gets mad at me. Who cares? You know what I mean? Embrace it. Embrace it. It took John Jones a long time to really embrace his role. I don't even know if he's fully embraced the role necessarily, but at some point, John kind of stopped caring a little bit, where he's just like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to be me, and if people like me, they're going to like me. If they don't like me, they're not going to like me. And guess what? Now John, in a weird way, is kind of like the popular guy against Daniel Cormier. For some reason, people don't like DC. Now, I don't understand why that is, But again, I can't. It's like why was George St-Pierre the biggest superstar of our sport, being who George St-Pierre is, and now Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor? They're talking about complete opposites on the end of the spectrum as far as personality, fight style, all these different things, yet they were both massive superstars. You can never predict these things. And so that's what I said with Tyron. He just has to be himself, go out there and do what he thinks is right. If it's calling out Nick Diaz, call out Nick Diaz. If it's calling out George St. Pierre, hey, you're a punk for fighting Bisping and not coming back and trying to get your title back, you know you're going to lose. Whatever the case may be yourself, man. Don't worry what other people are saying about you.
It's like one of those things when you see the trolls online and all they're looking to do is get a reaction from you, and all that Woodley does is give reactions to everybody, no matter what's going on. And one of the things I quickly wanted to bring up was he said that he felt like Dana White isn't really marketing him right as the champion. And to me, I think he just needs to understand the fact that, okay, he had a very good performance against Robbie Lawler. That was great. But he had that draw against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and now he's got another fight that a lot of people believe Thompson has won. So he's just got to be realistic as to where he's at and understand, I believe, that, the UFC giving you an opportunity to headline a card, to get in front of the mic, to do your thing, that's whatever you make out of it. But I think he has this sort of idea about how Dana White and the UFC, and I suppose even the fans, now that he has the belt, it's kind of like their job to be like, he's the greatest, he's the champ, he's the best. When in reality, we've seen many champions who have held the belt, and, the UFC hasn't really pushed them either. We've seen, for example, guys like Demetrius Johnson, even when Stipe won the belt. If you win the belt, I think Tyron just has to come around to the fact of, if you win the belt, it's not the end of the journey. It's just the beginning of it. And I think he just feels, I don't want to say like he's entitled, but he feels almost like fans and the UFC owe him something now that he's champion. And I think that might turn fans off a little bit more than if he was just to go in, do his thing, and let people make up their own minds about him.
Well, I think what he needs to do is... Sorry, you go, Damon.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it would benefit him if he sort of maximized the opportunities in terms of self-promotion, because he keeps referring to opportunities that his peers are granted that he is not getting. And I think, all right, what peers is he talking about? Probably Conor McGregor, probably Bisping, and probably GSP. Those, to me, are the people that seem to be getting, I guess, the passes on super fights. But it's like, well, I think it's hard for him to compare himself to those guys. I mean, Conor McGregor's an anomaly. He's the biggest draw in the sport. Ronda Rousey, same thing. Bisping, he may not be a proven draw per se. He may not be a 600, 800, 1 million, 1,000 kind of pay-per-view guy, but he really sells fights. And GSP, I mean, he is a proven draw. So I think before he gets these super fights, he does need to prove that he is a draw. And I think by doing things like, leading up to UFC 209, he specifically said that he doesn't want to talk about GSP. Nobody asked him about GSP. I mean, that's flushing away opportunities at promoting that fight. I understand he doesn't want to get distracted, but, you look at a complete opposite example of, say, Conor McGregor when he was fighting Jose Aldo, and he was at that press conference, with the glasses, and he basically picked a fight on stage with every single person, Cowboy Cerrone, RDA, and he set up all these fights. I mean, he had a fight lined up as well. He had the opportunity to get distracted, and I think Tyron Woodley needs to maximize those opportunities. He says he doesn't want to talk about GSP before the fight. After the fight, he won't call him out. I mean, these promotional opportunities, they wait for nobody. You need to take them when you can. And I think that, doing things like during the post-fight press conference, there was a few moments where he mentioned that the PR lady is giving him a look and sort of, tapping away, and he doesn't want to say things because the PR lady is saying something or looking at him funny. Could you imagine Conor McGregor saying something like that? Could you imagine Conor saying, I have a lot of things to say, I have a lot of things on my mind, like Frank Costanza at the airing of the grievances, but I'm not going to say it because the PR lady is going to, give me a funny look. I think it kind of comes off a little bit weak, and I think he needs to put more energy into selling fights and winning fans instead of, complaining and kind of saying, woe is me. What do you think, Damon?
Well, I think here's the problem that Tyron's run into is that he hasn't had the biggest stage to perform, and when he has, it hasn't gone that way, because we should have been raving. Absolutely raving about the way he knocked out Robbie Lawler. I mean, arguably the most vicious knockout striker in the welterweight division gets knocked out cold in the first round. That should have been a huge moment. But guess what? it came right after UFC 200, and it came right before Diaz McGregor 2. It got sandwiched in between those two monster cards, and so it literally got lost in the mix. I mean, that was just kind of like the forgotten pay-per-view. And even Woodley, was kind of addressing that because he basically felt like he was getting kind of shafted into that card. And listen, I don't blame him. There's probably a lot of fighters who didn't want to be on that card for that very reason. And then UFC 205, once again, he's kind of part of the McGregor show, where the thing that Tyron Woodley got recognized mostly for that week was him getting into an altercation with Conor McGregor at the frickin' weigh-ins. It wasn't his fight with Wonder Boy. And then he had a chance to kind of define himself. And if you're doing that scoring by pride scoring, Woodley would have won that fight. I mean, nearly finished him a couple of different times in that fight, but, based on the 10-point must system, it ended up being a draw. So he didn't get to have his moment there either. It was kind of, it was a draw. It was basically like the fight in a way didn't happen almost. So he didn't get his moment there. And then this card, he's on top, but, as much as, he probably would have liked Khabib and Tony to be on the co-main event for his pay-per-view status, that fight was getting more attention. More people were interested in that fight than they were with his fight with Wonder Boy. So it's by no fault. I get the frustration is what I'm saying. I understand his frustration of kind of like, God, like, why me? I get it. I understand it because when you really look at those 3 fights in a row, he's kind of gotten. I mean, the draw is not. That's. I mean, you could argue that's his fault because he didn't go out there and win the fight. But I mean, it's just a weird set of circumstances. And then he was, kind of the co-main event on a Conor McGregor show. I mean, nobody was really talking about Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Caroline after that card either. You know what I mean? That's a Conor McGregor show. That was his show. And this time around, he lost out on Khabib Tony, and that was the fight more people were talking about. So it's just one of those things. He's just been a kind of a victim of circumstance over and over again. And at some point, you kind of, if you really examine it, you're kind of like, man, I do kind of feel for the guy a little bit.
But then at the same time, you look at him and you go, hey, you're on the Conor McGregor show. This is a great opportunity for you to get new eyes on you and speak to a bigger audience as well. And then do you guys remember after UFC 205 in the press conference, he didn't really want to talk about Conor McGregor. I mean, Conor McGregor was giving him opportunities to really build this potential fight. Even at the stare downs, we saw what Conor McGregor did. And Conor McGregor has a million different options, and he still creates more options with Woodley. And then Woodley doesn't really want to talk about it. I mean, I had to literally get it out of him in that pre-fight press conference where I had to ask Conor McGregor if he wants his belt. And Woodley's like, oh, no, he doesn't want my belt. Do you want his belt? Yeah, I want his belt. What's your I shouldn't have to go around doing that. He should be like, he wants my belt. Well, he can't take it. He's this, he's that. I can smash him. I'll smash him up. That's a great opportunity. Most of the guys in the division, they wish Conor McGregor was calling him out. They're calling Conor McGregor out, whether they're ranked in the top 10 or they're not. They're just like, give me McGregor, give me McGregor. I wish Conor McGregor would mention me once. He got that a number of times, and I don't really feel like he really went with it. But quickly, just about Michael Bisping, I think, Bisping was a workhorse for a really long time. He really had to put in a lot of work before the UFC really got behind him and gave him the opportunities that he's gotten. But I feel like in a few situations, he was a little bit like Tyron Woodley, where he could have been like, oh, why aren't I being utilized? But he kept his head down. He was a company man. He worked hard, and he got to the point where now he's getting those super fights. So there's definitely ways to get around it. But quickly, Damon, as to what's next, Demian Maia, he's booked for Masvidal. People are wondering what's going to happen to the welterweight division. What do you see is happening next for Tyron?
I think at this point, two things are going to happen for Tyron. One, I think he's going to end up facing the winner of Maia Masvidal, and both of those are interesting matchups. Now, in a weird way, if I'm Tyron Woodley and I want to get attention on my fight and I want to get a fight that's going to get people buzzing, you better be rooting for Jorge Masvidal to win that fight. And that's no offense whatsoever to Demian Maia. But the things that Tyron Woodley said about Demian Maia last week during UFC 209 Fight Week is absolutely right. Maia doesn't have a style that typically gets people excited or get them, kind of on top of the, kind of going crazy for his style. He's dominant, and the hardcore fans love him, but you don't hear a lot of buzz when Demian Maia is fighting because he's a submission guy. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. He's amazing. I love watching Demian Maia fight, but I'm also not a casual fan. I'm a hardcore fan. I love all of it. I love to see the wrestling side of it. I love to see, I just watched the Big Ten Championships in wrestling on Sunday. I love all of it. But that's not every fan, and I get it. I don't begrudge, fans for liking what they like. So I agree with Tyron Woodley in that aspect. So if Jorge Masvidal can beat Demian Maia, which I think there's a great chance that happens, you got Masvidal who's all over the place. I just talked to him today. This guy's hilarious. He's, he come out there and he just run through Cowboy Cerrone, which was ridiculous. He's on a nice win streak right now. He's got a style that will make the fight because he's not going to go out there and try to outpoint Woodley. And right away, you got a natural storyline built in because they are teammates. They're both an American top team. And the difference that Tyron Woodley doesn't have over Jorge Masvidal that he had on Robbie Lawler is that Robbie Lawler ultimately was an American top team guy, but he had been an American top team for a couple of years. Tyron, even though he trains at Rufus and he has his own gym in Missouri, he's been with American top team in some form or fashion for years. I mean, Dean Thomas is his head coach, and Dean Thomas is, ATT till he dies. Well, Jorge Masvidal is an original. He's been there for like 11 years. I mean, the guy is like, if you talk about American top team, you're talking about 5 or 6 different guys. Jorge Masvidal is one of those guys. So it's going to create a very interesting dynamic of those two fighting each other with the whole teammate thing. What will they say about each other? How will this go? And then you got styles make fights. Jorge Masvidal is a very exciting style. So I think that's ultimately what comes next for him. And if I'm Tyron Woodley, I'm sitting front row and I'm rooting for Jorge Masvidal to win that fight.
Those are two great options. I think Tyron Woodley's a really tough matchup for Maia as well with his really good takedown defense, and if Maia can't get to the ground, I think he might be a little bit screwed. But you can't look at this Maia-Masvidal fight without discussing just the UFC's treatment of Maia in general. And I'm curious what you think, Damon, because kind of seems like this title shot is very elusive for Maia. A lot of people thinking that he deserved it for a while, and you can't help but look at this fight and think, all right, it's a great fight, Maia-Masvidal, but why is it even happening? It would be so much easier to just stick Maia in against, the winner of Wonderboy Woodley, which is now Woodley, and just have it as that. And I get this feeling that with guys like Maia, with guys like Jacare, some people say it's racism. Some people say that the UFC hates Brazilian fighters. I don't think it's got anything to do with racism per se. I think it really comes down to the fact that the pay-per-view markets, the markets where the UFC makes the most money, I think there's really only 4. There's North America, there's Canada, there's Australia, and there's New Zealand. And guess what? They're all English-speaking countries. So whether it's wrong or right, I kind of get this feeling that the UFC are moving towards, especially WMA, IMG, they're moving towards fluent English-speaking fighters that can connect with those demographics. And that's why you're seeing guys like Maia, and of course his style as well, and guys like Jacare kind of get shafted a bit. What do you think, Damon?
Well, it's a bit of that. I can understand that for sure. I think also, with Maia, is that he's running into the case of time, time ticking away. No one could have predicted that Woodley and Wonderboy were going to fight to a draw and then they were going to have to rematch 4 months later. Now, in a way, he should be thankful because that rematch could have taken longer. I mean, they fought in November. They could have easily pushed that to 6 months, and that would have been May. So in a way, you should almost be thankful that it happened in March and not May or June, depending on how quickly they reback that rematch. But that's really what screwed Maia in this whole thing was the rematch with Woodley and Wonderboy. If that didn't end in a draw, I really do believe we would have watched Tyron Woodley fight Demian Maia this past weekend. That's what hurt him. And then I think at some point, you have to weigh in, risk versus consequence. What point do you think, am I not going to get this fight? Am I going to get this fight? I mean, yes, he could have gambled and said, I'm not going to take this fight. I'll take the winner of Woodley Wonderboy. There's still no guarantee he's going to get it. How many times have we heard Dana say this guy's the number 1 contender and they still don't get a title shot? I mean, listen, Tyron Woodley played his cards right. He didn't get to fight Johnny Hendricks. Johnny Hendricks fell out of their fight with the kidney stones and everything was going on with him. He couldn't fight that time and he got drawn out, and Dana said Tyron's the next guy, he's next in line. And then they had Carlos Condit fight Robbie Lawler, and Tyron didn't get that next shot. It was Carlos and Robbie, and he still sat out and waited. And there were people like myself who said I didn't think he deserved the title shot at that point because I thought, man, you can't sit out that long and wait. But it paid off. And Tyron made the most of it. I'm the first one to eat crow in that situation. He made the most of his situation, and it worked out. He got Robbie Lawler in July. He knocked him out. He's the best welterweight in the world, and it's proven now. So you have to be careful with those gambles, though, because where Tyron's paid off, I would say 9 times out of 10, it probably doesn't. So this is probably just Maia saying, you know what, I'm going to stay active and I'm going to fight. And I'm gonna go out there and do my thing, and if everything works out well and I win, then I'll get the title shot later this year. Because I don't think Tyron Woodley's going to come back super quickly. I mean, he did just kind of have back-to-back camps. I can't imagine him fighting before maybe July. I'm guessing maybe or August. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad move, and I don't think it's really detrimental to Demian because if you remember when Woodley was sitting out, we heard all kinds of rumors about Woodley being offered fights too. Remember that? He just didn't take him, and he kind of gambled. So you can gamble and you win, but you can also gamble and lose.
And Casper mentioned Jacare before, and the big fight here for all the Aussies is that Jacare-Robert Whittaker fight. Everybody's looking forward to in April. Damon, what does this fight do for young Robert Whittaker if he beats Jacare?
Well, it's a huge moment. I mean, coming off that knockout over Derek Brunson, Whittaker is poised to make a run at the title. He has a style, as I said, that fight fans love. He goes out there and knocks people out, as a very exciting, striking style. And now he's getting to do it on a little bit of a bigger stage in the United States, on a Fox card. It's a card that everyone's going to see on a Saturday night, one of the main card fights. And that's where he's really going to get to make his statement. So if he can beat Jacare Souza, I mean, listen, there's no guarantee he's going to get a title shot, because you got Yoel Romero, out there. You got, you still have Luke Rockhold coming back. So there's no guarantee. But what he will do if he beats Jacare Souza is he's going to be on a very, very short list of guys who will either be fighting for the title or be one fight away from the title. But also it does something for his brand, because he gets the chance to get his name and his face out there to a wider American audience, which, as you said, those 4 markets you're talking about, he's got New Zealand locked down. You know what I mean? That's his home. That's where he's from. Now he needs the American audience. If he gets American audience behind him and he can get a big American audience going on, then he's got two of the big 4 covered. And that's a great thing for not only his style, because he is an exciting fighter, but also because you want those fans. You want people to say, I want to see this guy fight. I want to see him fight Bisping. I want to see him fight, Yoel Romero. And that's ultimately what helps drive these kind of fights to happen, is because the fans do have an influence.
It's good to see him fight overseas. I mean, preferably would have been a little bit nicer for him to be on a little bit of a bigger card, maybe in Vegas, but nevertheless, it's nice to see him overseas and get some new eyes on him. And I agree with you, Damon. This is going to be a big win for him if he can get it. It's a tough test. There's no doubt about it. Jacare is going to be a very, very difficult test, but I'm excited to see what happens in the matchup. Now, before we finish this thing up, Logan has been the talk of the town. I've actually been looking forward to this movie ever since I saw the preview that had Johnny Cash Hurt on it, which I was like, oh yeah, this is one of the best trailers I've seen in quite some time. Usually trailers give out the whole plot of the movie, but this one was done very, very well. And before we jump to Damon's review on Logan and hear what I have to say, we'll go to Casper first, because Damon, we don't want you to outwork us or outshine us, as to say. So we'll do our part first, and then of course finish out with a big bang. That is Damon Martin. Casper, your thoughts on the Logan movie?
Yeah, I'm the opening act. I feel like I'm warming everybody up. Man, I loved it. This was such a good movie. When you watch a movie like Logan, and obviously the previous X-Men movies were done by Marvel Studios, I believe, and this one was done by 20th Century Fox. Different director, different everything. It has a very, very different style, very different feel. It's raw, it's gritty, it's really intimate, it's story-driven, it's character-driven. When you watch a movie like this, an X-Men movie like this, you wish that all the X-Men movies were like this. I mean, it was, it had so much good action in it, but I feel like it was used kind of sparingly. There's definitely a good amount where you don't feel like you need more, but, you don't have these pointless, cheesy action sequences where it's like, all right, we're going to do an action sequence just for the sake of introducing some new mutants. I mean, the mutants in the movie itself are used pretty sparingly, but I got to say, the actual fight scenes are the best I've seen in any X-Men movie. And don't forget, this is rated R, and there's a very good reason for it. The opening scene is probably my favorite. F-bombs are flying all over the place, which I think was not necessarily missing, but I welcome that. But my God, if you've ever seen X-Men movies and thought, you know what, I like Wolverine fighting, I like him destroying people, but I just wish he'd get a little bit more anger out. I just wish he'd, fuck people up a little bit more. You are going to get that in this movie. You are going to get that and more. I mean, every X-Men movie has that moment where Wolverine has that berserker rage and he really goes for it, but I just always felt like, you know what? There needs to be more with this. Well, I mean, you basically see exactly what happens in these fight scenes, where the claws are going, and what they are doing to people and their bodies. There are bad people in this movie, people that you won't like, and you will see them get hurt very, very, very badly. It's really gory, it's really gruesome, and that's how I like my X-Men movies. It's a very different Wolverine, it tugs at your heartstrings, and I feel like every X-Men movie, one of the biggest points is to humanize the mutants and make you look at them, and yes, they have crazy superpowers, but they're just like you and I. And I think that this movie did it a lot more subtly than the other ones, and I think it did it a lot better. There's no cheesy comedic humor or anything like that. It's just really, really stellar acting, an amazing edge-of-your-seat story, and 5 out of 5 Timothy Johnson mustaches. It is the perfect score for me. I would see it again and again and again. And Damon, you are new to the system, so just letting you know, we rate our movies in Timothy Johnson mustaches. Patent pending, it will one day be the world-renowned review standard. So I'm curious what you think and how many mustaches you give it. Unless Dennis, unless you're going first.
Of course, I'll go first. I'm not going to let Damon steal my thunder. And also, I don't want to see those mustaches on the Nerdcore Movement website, Damon. Don't make us do a Mark Hunt and take a lawsuit against you, because we will do it. Now, quickly, my thoughts on the movie. I was really looking forward to this. Like I said, I had a lot of big expectations for it. I heard some of the great reviews on it. I'm a big fan of Sir Patrick Stewart. He's done amazing work. It's crazy to look at the fact that the first X-Men movie actually came out, I believe, in 2000. Now we're in 2017. Him and Hugh Jackman have a crazy relationship. They're on this UK show called The Graham Norton Show, which is like a talk show, and Sir Patrick Stewart actually announced that is going to be his last X-Men movie as well. So I'm not sure if that actually got around to everybody out there, but yeah, he wants to finish it out on that, and I think it's a great way to finish it out. It's a different type of Professor X that people are used to seeing. I think the great thing about this movie is it's not as much of a superhero movie as it is just a great classic tale of just relationships and looking after someone. I mean, a few things touched me about it. I think a lot of things about the movie is going to touch people depending on what their lives are like. For example, if you deal with elderly people, if you have older grandparents, older family members, and you look after them, that kind of aspect of it touches you. Relationships, the relationships in the movie really touch you. The bond that Wolverine has with, I won't say who in the movie, will really touch you. And also the fact that he has really become a part of pop culture and a part of our lives, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. He's a lovable character. Don't want to spoil what happens in the movie, but obviously stuff happens and it's going to touch your heartstrings as well. So it is a movie that I would say really stands out, and almost calling it a superhero movie is an insult to the movie. I just think it stands alone as a great movie with a great classic tale, and also really, like Casper said, humanizes the mutants. So I really enjoyed it. I really thought it was done well. It was a different look. I mean, just the script, the way Professor X spoke, I mean, the hilarious moments. People don't realize, but because Sir Patrick Stewart and Hugh Jackman have such a long-standing relationship, there are actually a couple of scenes in the movie that were improvised between both men. I think the director sort of just really wanted to bring that relationship out. If you kind of look at the movie and look at it from the real-life standpoint of Hugh Jackman and Sir Patrick Stewart being someone that Hugh Jackman looked up to as he was studying acting here in Australia, actually using some of Sir Patrick Stewart's Shakespeare footage to actually learn how to act, and then actually being able to be in the movie with him and now finishing out this chapter with him. There was actually a lot of real truth about the story and what happened between them in reality as in the movie. To them, it was their opportunity to say goodbye to each other after almost 17 years of sort of playing with each other in different kinds of movies. So the emotion was real, and I think they sort of went to that place, which is what makes it so effective. So I'll jump to you in a sec, Damon. To me, it's 3.5 Timothy Johnson mustaches. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think it's something that it's going to be very difficult for the X-Men franchise to figure out what they're going to do next. Wolverine has for a long time been the character that sort of held the crappier versions of the X-Men movies together. It's going to be super tough to find someone else to play Wolverine. But I'm hoping we see him come back in that second Deadpool movie in a bit of a cameo appearance. I'm hoping Ryan Reynolds can pull it off. But anyway, to you, Damon, your thoughts on the movie.
Well, first off, let me say that as a comic book reader for pretty much my entire life, and then going into watching the first X-Men movie back in the year 2000, truth be told, I've always hated Wolverine as a character. I've never understood the attraction of that character. Maybe it may just be like the anti part of me where it's like everyone loves it, so I have to hate it, that kind of thing. I don't know. There's just something about it I never really liked. I was always a big fan of Cyclops. I grew up reading the Cyclops Jean Grey stories and all those things. And in the movies, they basically made Wolverine the love triangle, and they made Cyclops such a douchebag. And I was kind of like, man, this kind of ruins it for me, because Cyclops, Scott Summers is actually a phenomenal character and has some really great stories in the history of the X-Men, but they just completely took a shit on him with Wolverine. And I'm just like, oh my God, like every time, every single time. So I'm not a Wolverine fan. The first Wolverine movie was awful. The Wolverine was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay. But I heard all this stuff about Logan. So let me get that out of the way first to say I was going in as a skeptic because I do not like this character, typically. I didn't mind him in Days of Future Past. I thought he was pretty good in that. But once again, it was kind of like, oh my God, do we have to make this guy the central thesis of every freaking X-Men movie? Can't there be something else? Well, Logan finally got me on board. Logan finally made me a fan of Wolverine, of the character. It was never Hugh Jackman, by the way. I always liked his performances. I just didn't like the character. This movie was awesome. It was everything you could hope for in an X-Men movie. The action was great. The dialogue was great. I won't spoil anything, but you guys will know what I'm talking about. There's one scene where Patrick Stewart is doing a lot of dialogue, talking about history when he's in a bedroom, if you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it is just watching him do that. I mean, if they don't nominate him for some awards for that moment in the film, there's something wrong with the awards committees who look at films. I'm serious. Like that's an Oscar moment. It was so freaking good. And the story was poignant. It was funny at moments, which is kind of weird to say considering this is, such a kind of a bleak movie in a lot of ways, but it was funny at moments. It was action packed. It was heartbreaking. It was pretty much everything you could expect. Like I said, I don't want to jump too far ahead to say it's one of my top 3 or 4 favorite comic book movies of all time. But I would definitely put it in that same, conversation with The Dark Knight, which is, my favorite comic book movie of all time. And also I want to point out this whole concept of comic book movies really, as a comic book fan kind of pisses me off because comic books still in movies for some reason have this like connotation attached to them that if it's a comic book movie, it has to be for kids, which drives me insane because if you're a comic book reader, like actually reading comic books over the last, 30 years, you would know that stories in comic books are a lot more serious and adult-oriented than what we typically associate with Superman or Batman. I mean, go read some of the Batman stories that are out there from the last 20, 30 years. Oh my God, they're not made for children at all. But somehow we get this like indoctrination that these movies have to be made for kids. So I applaud James Mangold and Hugh Jackman fighting to make this an R-rated movie. Obviously, Deadpool was my favorite movie of last year. I applaud Ryan Reynolds for, going to bat for that. And even movies like, Captain America Civil War, which didn't go as crazy with like the killing and the blood and the nudity or the language, it was still a very serious film. Like it didn't feel like a kid's movie masquerading as a comic book movie or whatever. So I really enjoyed the fact that they did that. And like I said, start to finish, I love this movie. It was great. I would give it 5 out of 5 Timothy Johnson mustaches with the Don Fry mustache on top.
Wow.
We are stealing that. We are stealing that rating score. You are not allowed to use it at Nerdcore Movement, and we will get our lawyers to send you letters if you do. Now, guys, that is the end of Submission Radio. A big, big thank you to Damon Martin. He is one of the best. We all know the amazing work that he does on Fox Sports, but do yourself a favor and go to nerdcoremovement.com and check out his amazing work there. A lot of crazy pop culture stuff coming out, of course. Power Rangers movie coming out. New Spider-Man movies on its way out. New Guardians of the Galaxy on its way out. A lot of stuff coming out. The new Batman animated movie, which Damon I hear is going to be amazing. Apparently that has amazing reviews. People are saying it's better than a lot of superhero movies out there, is coming out. So we'll have to get you back on to talk about that. And a big thanks to Dan Kelly, Javier Mendez, Luke Rockhold, Bas Rutten, and yourself, Casper, for doing an amazing job this week. We will be back next week with more Submission Radio, so be safe, and we'll catch you then.